Chapter 480. This elf's figure, looks, and disposition are all exceptional. If Sally gives off a cold and aloof vibe, then she gives off an arrogant and condescending aura. However, that aura doesn't make me feel uncomfortable at all. Instead, I feel like it's only natural that someone like her should have such a disposition. 9, 2 points, a little worse than Gloria. Meg assessed Blower in his heart. As for why her score was a little lower than Gloria's, it was most likely because he preferred obedient and petite girls. This girl was simply too tall. If she were on Earth, she could easily become a model or even a supermodel. Of course, that was just a type of admiration. Meg's heart was as calm as still water as he looked at her. Meg's heart was as calm as still water, but the same couldn't be said for the customers in the line. The sudden arrival of such a stunning beauty made many men involuntarily steal furtive glances at her. Some of them were even comparing her to Sally in their hearts. Compared to the aloof Sally, this young woman appeared to be more approachable. Beautiful elf, this must be your first time at Immerse, right? A lavishly dressed young man standing at the end of the line turned to Blower with a warm smile, but his eyes were surreptitiously drifting toward Blower's long and slender legs. Men. Blower rolled his eyes internally, but he didn't let any of this show on his face. It wasn't a bad idea to learn more about this restaurant from this guy. Thus, he nodded in a calm manner, displaying a hint of interest, but also a hint of disinterest. This was the most seductive behavior of a man. My name is Constantine, and I own 2 fairly large gem stores in the Aiden Square. Due to the fact that they're quite close to each other, I'm also a regular customer of Immerse. Constantine calmly demonstrated his wealth before continuing with a smile. Young mistress, you have a very good eye. Immerse is the most delicious restaurant in the Aiden Square. There's no other restaurant in Chaos City or even on the entire continent that can match the food here. Mr. Mac is a genius. Is the boss really that powerful? Blower naturally wasn't interested in this so-called gem store, but he was quite curious about the second half of the sentence. He didn't have any expectations for human food, but if he could eat something a little more delicious, then it wouldn't be a waste of his stomach. Why would I lie to you, beautiful lady? Look at this line. Most restaurants have only one line, right? But ever since Immerse introduced the tofu pudding dish, the sweet and savory sides have been fighting over the flavor of the dish. Because of the conflict between the sweet and savory sides, the line has been split into 2. The line we're in right now is the sweet side, while their line is the savory side. You must try the sweet tofu pudding later. Not only is it delicious, but it also has the effect of beautifying and nourishing one's skin. Constantine said with a smile. He was also quite tall, half a head taller than Blower, so he didn't appear to be at a disadvantage in the slightest. Don't listen to him, young lady. The savory tofu pudding is the true delicacy. If you don't eat savory tofu pudding, then what's the point of living? An old man in the line next to them countered. Their conversation immediately made the atmosphere between the 2 lines a little tense. However, the customers at the front of the line had already begun to enter, so the conflict didn't escalate. However, Blower's interest was piqued by the fact that neither side was willing to back down. Interesting. But what is this tofu pudding? It has the effect of beautifying and nourishing one's skin, so it's worth a try. However, for someone like me who has already reached the pinnacle of beauty, these things are almost useless, Blower thought to herself with a curious expression. In order to maintain his image as a gentle young man, Constantine didn't argue with the old man. Instead, he turned to Blower with a smile, and said, "May I know your name, beautiful young lady? Would I have the honor of inviting you to lunch with me? There's no need for lunch, Shirley, I can afford it myself." Blower flicked her golden curls as she walked past Constantine and followed the line toward the entrance of the restaurant. Could it be that spring really has arrived for me? My heart hasn't been beating for many years. I thought that there was no woman in this world who could move my heart, but it turns out that I just haven't met one yet. Constantine felt as if his soul had left his body as he turned to look at Blower's departing figure. His heart thumped rapidly, and even his breathing accelerated as he hurriedly caught up to her. Even though his invitation had been rejected, he felt like he had left a good impression on her. All he had to do was find an opportunity to sit beside her and settle the bill for her, and they would definitely be able to get to know each other better. Welcome. Yarbemia welcomed the customers into the restaurant with a smile, while Sally stood off to the side with a cold expression. Meg made his way toward the kitchen in preparation for the lunch service. What a beautiful elf, Aisha. Is she one of your brethren? Yarbemia's eyes lit up at the sight of the tall and slender Blower, and she couldn't help but ask in a curious voice. I've never seen her before. Sally had also noticed Blower, but she didn't recall such a person. However, following the war among species, many elves had left the Wind Forest and scattered across the continent. There were many elves even in Chaos City, and she was most likely one of them. What a beautiful big sister. Amy was also looking at Blower with sparkling eyes. The omniscient door in his mind flashed with the information of all of the customers. Their avatars, names, races, genders, powers. All of this information was displayed on the interface. Meg glanced at it from time to time. With his superb memory, he was able to easily remember all of the customers' names and information. As such, he wouldn't even need to use the omniscient door in the future to identify all of the customers. Looks like there are only a handful of powerful beings here. Meg heaved a faint internal sigh. There weren't many customers at the 5th tier or above, and 7th tier or above were the most powerful ones. As for 10th tier or above, Meg had only seen 4 10th tier powerful beings, including Crassus, Julian, Novan, and Michael. Just as Meg made his way to the kitchen, the avatars and information of an elf suddenly appeared on the interface. It was none other than the female elf that he had given a score of 9. 2. Meg's expression instantly stiffened upon seeing her information. Holy fuck, holy fuck, holy fuck. Chapter 481. Blower, Shirley, elf, male, 25 years of age, 7th tier magic caster. The information on the interface was very brief, but it revealed enough information. At the very least, the word male made Meg almost jump up in fright. Please don't doubt the system's professionalism. The omniscient door is a high-tech door that incorporates the system's newest detection technology. At the same time, it's connected to the entire Norland continent's information network, so it can accurately determine the identity of each and every customer who enters the restaurant. The system's serious voice sounded. After a while, it adopted a negotiating tone as it said, however, if you're skeptical about the detection results, you can apply for a manual retest. The system will retest the target to ascertain his identity. Then let's retest. Mag replied without hesitation. He didn't believe it. He had seen countless women before, so how could he be wrong about them? Ding. Detection complete. Blower, Shirley, elf, male, 25 years of age, 7th tier magic caster. Confirmed. Ding. The manual service fee of 1 gold coin has been successfully deducted. Please come again next time. Holy fuck. System, you're charging me a fucking fee? Why didn't you say so earlier? Meg raised an eyebrow. You didn't ask. Besides, is there really a free lunch in this world? The system replied with an innocent expression. At the same time, a shameless emoji of a big round head with a helpless expression appeared in Meg's mind. 100863 free? Also, don't send me emojis. Meg rolled his eyes. The system was becoming more and more shameless. Please don't compare me to those unintelligent manual services. They can basically reject 80% of the questions asked, but I've never received more than one complaint, the system said with a serious expression. Heh, I'm the only one. Meg pursed his lips with a peculiar expression as he looked at the information. Also, system, why is your manual retest identical to the previous one? You didn't just copy and paste it, did you? Please don't insult the system's professionalism. How could the system do something like that? A solemn protesting emoji floated by before the system continued. This system used the omniscient door to scan him again, and this is the result. This is the so-called manual service for which you charged me a gold coin? You're cheating me. You're committing a crime. The omniscient door is mine to begin with, and if there's a problem with it, what's the point of re-examining it? Meg was a little annoyed. He didn't know where the system had stolen these emoticons from, but they looked really despicable together. Of course it's intentional. Originally, the omniscient doors detection was automatically triggered. Now that I'm using it again, I need to operate it manually. This is the so-called manual service. Host, just accept the fact that this is a male elf. This is the uniqueness of the omniscient door's gender detection. If the host's gender is wrong, wouldn't it be awkward if the host's gender is bigger than yours? The system's words carried a hint of mockery. Looks like this is the legendary crossdresser. When a man is flirtatious, women have nothing to do with him. Meg turned around to look at Blower, who was standing at the center of the group like a proud swan, and he couldn't help but sigh as he accepted the system's assessment. Is the host interested? The system asked. I definitely can't do something like taking advantage of a man despite knowing the situation. Meg refused in a stern manner. He walked into the kitchen to ponder the situation. A 7th-tier elven magic caster hiding his gender to come to the restaurant. Could it be that he's here for Sally? He was aware of Sally's identity, and the elves were still searching for her. Now that a crossdresser had suddenly appeared, the first person that came to his mind was naturally Sally. After spending some time together, Meg was quite satisfied with Sally. She didn't talk much, but she was able to complete all of her tasks with high quality and quantity. She was a major contributor to the restaurant's smooth operation, saving him a lot of labor. Of course, Meg had to admit that using a 7th-tier elven magic caster like Sally, who had the potential to become the elven princess or even the queen, to do dishes and clean tables was a little overkill. However, Meg was of the opinion that it was Sally's choice whether she wanted to return or not. If she wanted to stay, Meg naturally wouldn't chase her away, nor would he allow anyone to take her away so easily. Meg set this matter aside for the time being. If he really was here for Sally, then he was going to give himself away sooner or later, and he would have to deal with him when the time came. The restaurant's decor is quite good, but there are too many people dining here from all different races. Am I supposed to sit at the same table as a demon? Blower looked around the restaurant. The elegant decor was quite stylish, and the wooden tables and chairs made him feel very comfortable. What was even more surprising to him was that all of the tables and chairs in the restaurant had very similar patterns, as if they had come from the same tree. Normal people wouldn't be able to notice such a detail, but it was clear that the owner had put in a lot of effort. Constantine stood behind Blower, occasionally chatting with him in a very enthusiastic manner as he racked his brains for ways to please Blower. As one of the most eligible bachelors in Chaos City, it had been many years since he had been so attentive to a woman. Blower only gave an occasional response. He wasn't in the mood to engage in idle chatter with a man who clearly wanted to fuck him. You're so beautiful, big sister. Amy made her way over to Blower with Ugly Duckling in her arms. Not only was she beautiful, but she was also very tall, almost as tall as Blower's father. Ugly Duckling also looked up at Blower and blinked with a hint of confusion in its eyes. What an adorable little half-elf girl. Blower looked down at Amy, and his eyes immediately lit up. She had an intricate face, pointy little ears that were as white and translucent as cicada wings, long silver hair that was tied into twin ponytails, and a pair of large bright blue eyes. She was so adorable that he wanted to give her a hug. Silver hair, big blue eyes, and an equally adorable appearance. She looks so much like the princess when she was a child. She's so adorable. Blower screamed internally. In terms of looks, the only person he admired was Princess Irina. Now, it looked like he had to add another one to that list. You're also very adorable, little girl. What's your name? Blower turned to Amy with a smile. My name is Amy. A joyful smile appeared on Amy's face. Being praised by a beautiful big sister was very delightful. Amy, that's a very nice name. You can call me Big Sister Shirley. Blower nodded with a smile. He looked up at Meg, who was in the kitchen. This human had such an adorable half-elf daughter. Just which elven maiden had he fooled? Chapter 482. After Amy departed with Ugly Duckling in her arms, Blower began to appraise Sally. Sally, the young mistress of the Brewster family. She's 24 years old and a 7th-tier magic caster. She's Not bad looking. Of course, she's still not as pretty as me. He had read a lot of information about Sally, all of which had been given to him by Ingwe. It went so far as to how Sally had fallen into a river with Princess Irina when she was 7 years old. It appeared that the Billy family had expended a lot of effort in order to obtain this information. I'm not here for a blind date. Life is already so short, so why waste time on relationships? I'm here to dedicate my life to the cause of the elven race's liberation. A smile appeared on Blauer's face as he looked at Sally, and he murmured to himself, if Ingwe were to know that I'm here to recruit people, I wonder if he'd be furious. After a long wait, Blauer finally found an empty seat. He looked at the 3 sinister-looking demons sitting at the table, and he was a little hesitant about whether he should take the seat. Young Mistress Shirley, why don't we wait a little longer? There will definitely be 2 empty seats soon. Constantine hurriedly said as he looked at the 3 demons. He didn't want such a beautiful young mistress to share a table with 3 sinister demons. Furthermore, the 3 demons had only just sat down, and hadn't even placed their orders yet. If Blauer were to sit there, then he wouldn't be able to share a table with her. Yarbemia could also see Blauer's hesitation. It was quite normal for young women to have such concerns. She smiled, and said, you can wait for a moment, new seats will be available soon. There's no need for that. I'll just sit there. Blauer made his way over to the table where the 3 demons were sitting, and sat down on the empty chair. Constantine's mouth gaped open, and he heaved a resigned internal sigh at the sight of Blauer. This was the first time that he had been rejected by a woman, and this feeling of defeat was quite foreign to him. This must be young Mistress Shirley's test for me. I can't give up just like this. However, Constantine's fighting spirit was quickly reignited, and he quickly made his way over to the table next to Blauer. The 3 demons turned to look at Blauer in unison. All of them were tall and burly, and wore slightly tattered black armor, giving them quite an intimidating presence. Blauer looked at them with a calm expression, and there was no hint of fear in his eyes. The 3 demons withdrew their gazes in boredom. One of them raised his hand and said, I want 3 rugiamos and 1 braised chicken and rice. Give me 3 bowls of rice. Me too, the other 2 demons said at the same time. Okay, please wait a moment. What would you like to order, sir? Yarbemia nodded with a smile before turning to Blauer. Let me look at the menu first. Blauer nodded in response. He was quite fond of this half-dragon girl, who had a very soothing smile. However, he was very picky when it came to food. Men also needed to maintain their looks. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to maintain their peak looks. Taking care of one's figure was one of the most important aspects of that. As such, Blauer was very mindful of how much food he ate every day. Even when it came to meals, he was very particular about how much he ate. I've heard that human food is quite oily, so I'll just have to order some as a token of appreciation. I'll just have to eat again when I get back, Blauer thought to himself as he flipped open the menu, upon which his eyes immediately lit up. The interior of the menu was quite surprising to him. All of the dishes had pictures attached to them, and all of the pictures were extremely lifelike, as if they were real. What was even more surprising to him was that this was the first time he had seen these dishes, but he was struck by the urge to salivate. Regardless of whether it was the rainbow yangju fried rice, the braised chicken and rice, or the white tofu pudding, all of the dishes looked extremely enticing. All types of delectable aromas wafted through the air. Blauer had only eaten 2 small fruits for breakfast, and he suddenly felt his stomach rumble as he looked at the pictures. Calm down, calm down. I can't lose myself just because of a few pictures. Perhaps the dishes on the menu won't match the pictures. Furthermore, the tastes of humans and elves are definitely different, Blauer thought to himself. He then raised a hand to signal for Yarbemia to come over with a smile, and asked, for elves, what do you think would suit our tastes? I prefer bland food. All of the dishes in this restaurant are very delicious, but if you'd like bland food, I recommend the yangju fried rice and braised chicken and rice for the main dishes, and the tofu pudding and ice cream for the dessert. Those are all bland and delicious dishes. Yarbemia introduced the dishes based on Sally's preferences. Then I'll have the yangju fried rice. Blauer contemplated momentarily before nodding. The braised chicken and rice appeared to be a little sticky and greasy. Big Sister Shirley, the rainbow fried rice is super delicious. If you only order one serving, it won't be enough, Remi said seriously as she sauntered to the side of the table. I don't have a big appetite, so I won't even be able to finish one. Blower shook his head with a shake of his head. According to the pictures, he would only be able to finish half a plate, not even one more. Really? I've never seen a customer who can't finish the leftovers. Amy looked at Blower with incredulity written all over her little face. Little Amy, just you wait and see. Shirley, will never finish it. If I finish it, I'll definitely put on weight, and that's something I can't tolerate. Blower looked at Amy with a solemn expression. He was being doubted by a little girl, so he had to show her some sincerity. He didn't think that human food would be able to make her give up on her dreams and pursuits. All right, I'll be sure to watch. I'm sure you'll finish it. Amy also nodded with a solemn expression. She was very confident in her father's cooking. One Yangju fried rice, please wait a moment. Yabemia nodded before making her way into the kitchen. Blower looked around with a hint of surprise in his heart. He had thought that a restaurant with so many different races would be extremely rowdy and prone to conflict, but it was the exact opposite. All of the customers were focused on enjoying their food, and all of them were conversing with one another in hushed tones. There was no shouting or yelling going on in the restaurant. At the very least, this was the first time that Blower had seen the three demons sitting at the same table discussing where they were going to take their afternoon nap, and there was another hole in their armor. Chapter 483. The aroma of eggs and chopped green onions wafted through the air. All of the ingredients had been sliced into rice-sized grains before being distributed evenly on the plate. It was as if a rainbow had been plucked from the sky and sliced into pieces before being stir-fried. The colors were vibrant and refreshing, and there were specks of oil all over the rice grains, making them appear as if they were shimmering with starlight under the light. What a beautiful dish! Blower's eyes lit up, and he couldn't help but praise in his heart. The vibrant colors, the ingredients that had been sliced into tiny pieces, and the golden egg that had perfectly encapsulated each grain of rice, creating an intricate and beautiful work of art. On top of that, this aroma is simply too alluring. The aroma of the eggs is so rich, and the aroma of the onions is just right to make me feel refreshed and refreshed. The vibrant green color of the onions is just like the sprouts of early spring in the wind forest. Aside from that, there's also prawn meat, winter bamboo shoots, and other ingredients. The combination of meat and vegetables is just right, and it's rich in nutrients and low in fat. It's perfect. Blower's eyes lit up, and before he knew it, he had already picked up his spoon. The three demons at the same table had already been served, but they were all looking at him in unison, as if they were interested in whether he would be able to deliver on his promise. Constantine was also looking at him. Of course, he was more concerned about whether Blower would be bullied by the three demons, and he was prepared to step in at any moment. Amy was standing beside the table with Ugly Duckling in her arms, looking at her with curiosity in her eyes, clearly waiting for her to start eating. No. I have to control myself. Half a plate of fried rice with meat and vegetables is just enough for me to eat for the rest of the afternoon. I can't eat even a single grain of rice. Blower also noticed that everyone was looking at him, and he thought back to what he had just said. He took a deep breath before spooning a spoonful of fried rice into his mouth. This flavor. Blower's eyes immediately widened with incredulity. The egg that was wrapped around the rice almost melted in his mouth. The winter bamboo shoots and green beans that had been sliced into rice-sized grains were crunchy and delicious. The egg-wrapped rice was sweet after being chewed, and the soft ham was mixed into the rice, as well as the aroma of prawns. All of these flavors were contained in a single mouthful of fried rice. The wonderful taste danced on the tip of his tongue. His taste buds were like flower buds that had been baptized by the spring rain, blooming and cheering. Blower felt as if he were reminded of his younger self. He loved to climb up trees and peek at the dazzling princess as she led a group of elves through the wind forest. He also wanted to join them, but he didn't dare to do so. As such, he could only peek at them from afar. It was a spring morning. He had just climbed up the big tree that he liked to climb when he was kicked down. The one who kicked him was the princess who was always shining. Then, he became one of her followers. However, he was a little special. He would only follow the princess in the morning when there was no third person. When other people appeared, he would return to the tree and quietly watch them play. Stuffy Dun was a nickname given to her by the princess, but only he knew about it. In his eyes, the princess was a godlike existence that couldn't be disrespected. He could only look up at her from afar, and just being able to look at her was already fantastic. He swallowed the fried rice, and a warm current flowed down his throat. He felt as if his entire body was warm, and the fragrance of the rice still lingered in his mouth. It's the taste of the spring of life. A hint of surprise flashed through Blauer's heart, but he quickly recovered. If the spring of life had appeared in the outside world 50 years ago, the elven race would definitely have investigated it. However, after all of the major families took over the elven race, the sale of the spring of life had become a way for many elven nobles to make quick money. As long as one had the money, it wasn't strange to be able to obtain some spring of life in Chaos City. He just didn't think that someone would add it to his fried rice, nor did he think that it would become the finishing touch. The refreshing aftertaste made him want to take another bite. How could there be such delicious food in this world? How could such simple ingredients be used to create such a delicacy? I can't stop eating. Blauer picked up his spoon and placed another spoonful of fried rice into his mouth. He had never tasted such a delectable flavor before. Compared to the delicious wild fruits in the wind forest, this fried rice was a completely different existence. It was as if it had some kind of mystical power, and he couldn't help but continue to stuff his mouth with mouthful after mouthful of it. It was so delicious that he simply couldn't stop. Half a bowl at most. Strictly control every grain of rice. The ratio of intake to consumption. Those were his own word. In that instant, all of those thoughts had been completely tossed to the back of his mind. All that was left in his eyes was this Yangju fried rice. Ding! The fried rice smells so good. The porcelain spoon struck the bottom of the bowl, and a faint clink rang out. Blauer praised with a smile on his face, and he faltered momentarily at the sight of the empty bowl in front of him. Then, for some reason, he stuck out his tongue to lick the spoon. All of a sudden, silence ensued, and Blauer's hand also stiffened. He turned to the right, and the three demons were all staring at him with shock in their eyes. He then turned to the left, and a peculiar expression appeared on Constantine's face. In the end, he settled his gaze on Amy, who was standing beside the table. As expected, the smile on her face made him want to bury himself in a hole. How did I finish it all? And I even licked the spoon. Blauer felt as if he were about to faint. He had just vowed that he would only eat half a bowl of fried rice, and not a single grain more. However, there wasn't a single grain left, and the plate was even cleaner than if he had licked it. He was struck by the urge to have another bowl of fried rice. A faint blush appeared on Blauer's face, and he was struck by an inexplicable burning sensation. He looked at the empty plate with a remorseful expression as he thought to himself, according to my calculations, this is already twice the amount of food that I need. Furthermore, eating too quickly could lead to indigestion. Big Sister Shirley, you finished it all. The body is a lot more honest than the mouth. As expected, no one would want to leave father's cooking behind. Amy looked at Blauer with a warm smile, and said, do you want a tofu pudding or ice cream after eating the rainbow fried rice? They're super delicious too. The three demons at the same table also burst into laughter. They had initially been curious as to whether there were people in this world who could resist Mr. Mac's cooking, but it appeared that such people really didn't exist. Thus, they all picked up their rugiamos and braised chicken rice and began to dig in. Yarbemia also chuckled with a hand over her mouth. This elven young mistress really was quite interesting. Indeed, there were very few people who could resist Mr. Mac's cooking. No, there's too much sugar in the dessert, and I'll get fat if I eat it, so I definitely won't eat it. Blauer shook his head in a decisive manner. His face was burning with embarrassment at the sight of everyone's amused expressions. However, he couldn't help but raise his hand as he looked at the empty plate in front of him, and said, but please give me another Yangju fried rice. Chapter 484. I'll have another bowl. I'll use some magic to consume the excess when I get back, and everything should be fine, Bloom thought to himself. Blower made up his mind, and he couldn't help but cast his gaze toward the kitchen with anticipation in his heart. Just what kind of treasure was hidden in there to be able to cook such delicious food? Who is she? Is she really a wandering elf from the wind forest? Sally thought to herself as she put away the plates. The elven race had the most wandering elves among all the other races. Prior to the war among species, elves had always loved to travel the continent. Elves liked to live a free and unrestrained life, so many of them preferred to travel. However, as the hierarchical system was implemented in the elven race, the lives of the elves became more and more rigid. They built castles and residences, and lived more and more like humans. However, it was undeniable that the elven race had indeed become more powerful as more elves settled down. The elves would be trained to cooperate in battle, and during wartime, they would be able to assemble a powerful elven army in a short period of time. This was a powerful deterrent to other races. During the early stages of the war among species, the elven race was almost driven out of the wind forest. The main reason for this was that most elves lived on their own and had no sense of teamwork. As such, they were almost completely defenseless against the armies of other races. Even to this day, Sally still didn't know which was more suitable for the elven race. As such, she was curious about the elves living outside the wind forest. What were their lives like? Were they happier than the elves living in the wind forest? That was one of the reasons that drove her to flee the wind forest. Perhaps I can find an opportunity to communicate with her, Sally thought to herself. She had to avoid the elves living in the wind forest, but she could still interact with the elves living outside. Father, can I have ice cream? Just one will do. Amy's voice sounded from the kitchen door. Meg turned to look at her. Amy was standing at the kitchen door with Ugly Duckling in her arms. She rested her chin on the little orange cat's head, and looked at Meg with a pitiful expression in her blue eyes. Her pointy little ears drooped down, and her lips were slightly pouted, as if she were going to cry if he didn't agree. Ugly Duckling was also looking at Meg with an innocent expression. It waved its little paws in front of itself. She's learned the body fusion technique. Meg's eyebrows furrowed. He felt as if his entire heart had melted. He was going to give her everything she wanted. Even the stars and the moon in the sky would be plucked for her. She's so adorable. Meg was just about to agree, but he was a little hesitant at the thought of what had happened the night before. Amy had eaten too much ice cream the night before. Even though 1111 had already cured her, it still reminded him that he couldn't spoil Amy and let her eat too much ice cream. Amy can eat ice cream, but eating too much ice cream will cause her stomach to ache, so from now on, she can only have one ice cream a day. Are you sure you want to eat today's ice cream now? Meg looked at Amy with a smile. I can only have one ice cream a day. Amy's expression immediately crumbled, and she begged with a pitiful expression, Father, can I have one more? I only want 2 ice creams a day. No. Meg shook his head, and his tone left no room for negotiation. Spoiling a child was a principle that he had just learned the night before. Amy stared at Meg for a while, and after ascertaining that there wouldn't be a second ice cream, she heaved a resigned sigh and lowered her head with a pout as she said, Life is so difficult if I can only eat one ice cream. Meg almost burst into laughter. She knew that life was difficult, and she could only eat one ice cream a day. However, he didn't waver in his decision, and he smiled as he asked, Then what flavor of ice cream does our Amy want to eat today? Blueberry. Amy exclaimed as her eyes lit up again. Her pointy little ears immediately perked up as she looked at Meg with anticipation in her eyes. The little disappointment that she had just felt was completely wiped away. Blueberry? All right, then I'll give our little cutie a blueberry ice cream. Meg smiled as he made his way over to the ice cream machine, and quickly made a blueberry ice cream before handing it to Amy. Meow, meow. Ugly Duckling, which had been placed on the ground by Amy, looked at Meg with anticipation in its eyes as it pointed at the ice cream machine. Ugly Duckling can also only eat one ice cream a day. Otherwise, it'll become an ice cream ball. If that happens, it'll be eaten. Amy held the ice cream in her hands as she looked at Ugly Duckling with a serious expression. Meow tilde Ugly Duckling ducked its head. Even though it was a little sad, it still conceded. Meg shook his head with a smile. However, he agreed with Amy's suggestion. If Ugly Duckling was allowed to eat as much as it wanted, it would only be a matter of time before it turned into an orange. As such, he still had to control what he ate. So, what flavor of ice cream does Ugly Duckling want to eat today? Meg made his way over to the ice cream machine and pointed at the mocha ice cream. Ugly Duckling shook its head. He then pointed at the vanilla ice cream, and Ugly Duckling still shook its head. He then pointed at the blueberry ice cream, and Ugly Duckling still shook its head. Chocolate flavored? Mag asked as he pointed at the chocolate flavored ice cream. Meow, meow. Ugly Duckling immediately nodded with elation. It bounced into the kitchen before springing back out again, wagging its tail excitedly. Ugly Duckling, you have to remember that you're a duck. You're not a dog, so you can't wag your tail like that. Amy was a little disdainful. Ugly Duckling immediately stopped wagging its tail, but it was still licking its lips excitedly at the sight of the chocolate ice cream in Meg's hands. Eat. Meg placed the ice cream onto Ugly Duckling's little plate with a smile. He really didn't know what to do with these two little guys. Amy carefully made her way over to Blower with a smile, and asked, Big Sister Shirley, this is the ice cream. Doesn't it look super delicious? Blower looked at the ice cream in Amy's hands. The two dark blue snowballs were very vibrant, and the surface of the snowballs was also very delicate, giving off a frosty aura. There was heavy snow in the wind forest every winter, so she wasn't all that interested in snowballs. However, the snowballs in Amy's hands seemed to be different from normal snowballs. What was blueberry? Was it a type of fruit? Would the snowballs really taste good with blueberries? Blower was quite curious, but he still shook his head, and said, The color of the snowballs is very special, but I don't want to eat them. Chapter 485. Gulp. Not only Blower, but the three demons at the same table, as well as all of the customers around them, were also staring at Amy as she ate her ice cream. There was a saying among the regular customers of Amy's restaurant, don't watch Amy eat when you don't have any money in your pocket as you'll be tempted to order more. I want an ice cream with blueberry flavor. I only have 300 copper coins left for this month, but what can I do? I really want to eat that. Give me one as well. No, I have to hold back. I only have 10 copper coins left in my pocket. If I order another one, I won't be able to leave the restaurant. Some of the customers were conflicted, while others were quick to order ice creams. However, Amy wasn't feeling smug about her actions at all as her attention was completely focused on the ice cream in her hand. She held the ice cream in her little hands and slowly licked it with an expression of enjoyment on her face. She was so immersed in her delicious food that even those who were looking at her would feel a sense of satisfaction. Furthermore, she looked so adorable. It's just a snowball, but why does it look so delicious to her? It's as if she's tasting the most delicious food in the world. Blower's eyes slowly widened as he salivated uncontrollably. He had thought that he wouldn't be interested in the snowball, but he was becoming more and more curious about its taste. Just what kind of delicious food could make her smile so adorably? Big Sister Shirley, do you want to know what ice cream tastes like? Amy suddenly lowered her ice cream slightly as she turned to Blower with a smile. Yes. Blower nodded reflexively as his mind was filled with curiosity about the taste of the snowball. Then I can show you how to eat it. Amy picked up her ice cream and licked it again as she said with elation, It's sour, sweet, and super delicious. All of the customers around them burst into friendly laughter. It was always very interesting to watch the interactions between Amy and her customers during meals. Is that even possible? Blower was extremely frustrated, but he couldn't bring himself to be angry at the sight of the smile on Amy's face. Instead, he felt like he would be committing a crime if he didn't smile. A voice sounded in Blower's heart before reverberating incessantly in his mind. Should I get one of them to test the flavor? No. This snowball must be very sweet, and it doesn't look like a simple snowball. If I eat it, I'll definitely gain weight. Blower shook his head in an effort to rid himself of that thought, but he couldn't help but cast his gaze toward the ice cream in Amy's hand, and he gulped again. "You look so cute when you're conflicted." Constantine looked at Blower with an infatuated expression before beckoning to Yarbemia, and saying, "Hello, I'll have 2 blueberry ice creams, 1 for Miss Shirley." "Okay, please wait for a moment." Yarbemia nodded slightly and turned to the kitchen. "Actually, I don't want to." Blower extended a hesitant hand. "You don't want it?" Yarbemia stopped and turned to look at Blower. Blower hesitated again. "Let's do as I say." Constantine smiled. He could tell that Blower still wanted to do it. "All right." Yarbemia nodded before turning again. "Change mine to the matcha flavor," Blower said quickly. After saying that, he couldn't help but raise a hand to cover his face. This was far too embarrassing. In just a short while, he had gone back on his words twice. "It's all right, big sister Shirley. It's very embarrassing to go back on your words, but this isn't the first time you've done this, so you should be used to it already." Amy looked at Blower with a consoling expression. "What a pain. What kind of consolation is this?" Blower raised his other hand to cover the other half of his face as well. If it weren't for the fact that there was still a plate of Yeongju fried rice and ice cream waiting to be served, he would have already run out of the restaurant. It was simply too embarrassing to stay in a place like this for even a second longer. "From today onward, I definitely can't say things like how much I want to eat, especially in this restaurant." Blower made up his mind. After slowly calming himself down, Blower put down his hand and resumed his calm expression. How could a handsome man like him be defeated by such a small setback? Embarrassing? No way. "Big sister Shirley, how many ice creams are you planning to eat?" Amy asked with a curious expression. Blower's eyebrows twitched. He suddenly felt that this woman was only slightly less difficult to deal with than the princess had been in the past. In particular, that smile of hers reminded him of the devilish smile on the princess's face after every prank she pulled on him. That's impossible. There's no way the princess would have a daughter. There's no one in this world who's worthy of her. Blower shook his head to rid himself of the thought that had suddenly appeared in his mind. Perhaps there was one in the past, but it's a pity that he's dead now. "It depends on my mood." Blower smiled. He had learned his lesson this time. "Then you have to control your mood. If you eat too much, you'll really put on weight," Amy cautioned with a serious expression. Blower's mouth twitched, but he didn't say anything in the end. This child's ability to deliver heart-wrenching was completely natural. Who did she learn this from? Sally doesn't know much about the elven race, and she hasn't seen the elven princess in the past 3 years. If this guy came from the Wind Forest, then he might know something, Meg thought to himself as he looked at Blower. He handed the ice cream he had just made to Yarbemia. He really hadn't taught Amy her sharp tongue. He had always taught her to be a kind and righteous person. If he had to say something, then perhaps that was her talent. "Here's your mocha ice cream." Yarbemia handed the ice cream to Blower. "Thank you." Blower expressed his gratitude before his attention was drawn to the green ice cream in his hand. The refreshing aroma of green tea wafted toward him, and his mind was reinvigorated. The light green color was like that of the sprouts of spring tea. Even the 1,000-year-old tea tree in the wind forest that had absorbed the spring of life didn't have such a refreshing aroma. "What great tea!" Blower couldn't help but praise. Aside from sleeping on trees, tea tasting was his second favorite. Not only did he enjoy the tea leaves from the wind forest, he had collected and tasted all of the famous tea leaves on the Norland continent. However, this was the first time that he had smelled such a refreshing aroma. Even the spring tea leaves from Vic Mountain paled in comparison to this. Should I grind the tea leaves into powder before adding them to the snowball? Wouldn't that create a bitter taste? Blower thought to himself. He hesitated momentarily before imitating Amy and licking the snowball. The snowball melted on the tip of his tongue, and the sweet milk flowed down his throat along with the refreshing aroma of green tea. It was as if the fragrant milk had been enveloped by the tea leaves, and all of the impurities in his stomach and intestines were washed away. The refreshing sensation immediately made him feel refreshed. "Boss, you're wasting such a precious treasure." Chapter 486. Rage. Blauer's heart was instantly ignited with rage. Such supreme-grade tea leaves were being used as desserts by the restaurant owner. What a waste. As such, in the instant that he rose to his feet, he almost couldn't help but yell. Thankfully, he managed to repress the urge to do so. Even though his voice was a little strange, it was still a woman's voice. However, this sudden outburst of criticism immediately attracted the attention of all of the customers in the restaurant. Was this beautiful elf trying to stir up trouble? It had been a long time since anyone had stirred up trouble at Amy's. Constantine was also looking at Blauer with a hint of urgency in his eyes. There were many rules at Amy's, and one of them was that no one was allowed to make a racket in the restaurant. Furthermore, Blauer was yelling at Mr. Mack as if she were going to exact vengeance on him. Amy's mouth was slightly agape as she looked up at Blauer. She didn't understand why this big sister was suddenly so angry. Furthermore, she was criticizing her father. Yarbemia looked at the enraged Blauer, and was momentarily at a loss for what to do. In fact, she didn't even know why she was suddenly so angry. Sally looked at the mocha ice cream in Blauer's hand, and could roughly guess what was going on. She turned to look into the restaurant. "Excuse me, do you have any complaints about the restaurant?" Meg made his way out of the kitchen with 2 plates of Yangju fried rice, and placed them in front of the 2 customers before turning to Blauer with a smile. Who do you think you are?" Blauer could feel all of the eyes on him, and he looked at the smile on Meg's face. He suddenly realized that in his current state, it wasn't appropriate for him to use foul language, so he blurted out those words without thinking. "Ah, that's so embarrassing." Blauer wanted to bury his face in his hands as soon as those words escaped his mouth. Meg faltered momentarily before looking at Blauer with raised eyebrows. This crossdresser really was something else. In order to maintain his ladylike image, he almost burst into laughter. Even when he's angry, he's still so adorable. "I'm so lucky." Constantine looked at Blauer with an intoxicated expression. PFFFT. Yarbemia couldn't help but burst into laughter. This elven girl really was quite interesting. All of the customers were curious about what kind of argument was going to ensue, and they all burst into laughter. Blauer's way of scolding someone was really quite unique. "Big Sister Shirley, what's a small biscuit? Can it be eaten?" Amy asked with a curious look on her face. "It's a small biscuit." An awkward expression appeared on Blauer's face, but he still offered an explanation to Amy. He cleared his throat to alleviate the awkwardness before turning to Mag with an enraged expression as he said, "Boss, don't you feel guilty for using such supreme-grade tea leaves to make desserts? Do you have any idea how valuable these tea leaves? Even the spring tea from Vic Mountain can't compare to this tea." "I know." Mag nodded with a smile. These tea leaves were taken from the 8 Longjing imperial tea trees. After the system's optimization and cultivation, the quality of these tea leaves was indeed the best. Even in his previous life, when he was often dragged to drink tea with his old man, he had never tasted such good tea before. "Then why are you wasting it like this?" Blauer had thought that Meg was only using such precious tea leaves because he didn't know how valuable they were. However, he didn't think that Meg was aware of the value of these tea leaves, and that made him even more enraged. It's precisely because it's so precious that it's allowed to appear in the restaurant. That's why it's qualified to become an ingredient in the restaurant. Every customer deserves better. That's the only criterion I have when choosing ingredients. This is the best tea leaves, so I use them to make matcha ice cream. The ingredients in the restaurant are also the best. Meg looked at Blauer with a calm expression. He wasn't enraged in the slightest, but he wasn't backing down in the slightest, either. It was as if he were merely stating an ordinary fact. Could it be that he's telling the truth? That all of the ingredients in the restaurant are of the same caliber as these tea leaves? Blauer looked into Meg's eyes. His black eyes were clear and bright, and there was something about them that made him believe in them. He thought back to the Yangju fried rice he had just eaten. Regardless of whether it was the rice, the eggs, or even the side dishes, they were all superior to what he usually ate. Moreover, this fellow actually turned a blind eye to my peerless beauty. How can there be a man in this world who can ignore my beauty? Could it be That he likes men? Blower raised an eyebrow upon discovering that things weren't as simple as they seemed. I was wondering why the food at Mammoth was so delicious. It turns out that Mr. Mac has done his best from the very beginning. It's rare to see a restaurant owner who cooks so seriously, so this is definitely worth the price, Harrison praised. George nodded with a curious expression, and said, indeed. Just these ingredients alone are worth more than this price. I wonder where Mr. Mac got so many premium ingredients from. Regardless of whether it's that shrimp or that shiitake mushroom, they're all extremely rare items in Chaos City. All of the customers who were initially feeling a little embarrassed were immediately dispelled upon hearing Meg's words. They suddenly felt that spending a few hundred copper coins on such a delicious dish was worth it. I admit that you have a point. These are your tea leaves, so you can do whatever you want with them. Blower turned to McGonagall with a serious expression, and asked, but boss, are you selling these tea leaves on their own? Everyone turned to Blower with a hint of surprise on their faces. They didn't think that she would back down so quickly, and even buy tea leaves from Mr. Mac. I'm sorry, but I'm not selling them. Meg shook his head. He didn't have any of these tea leaves. The system had only provided him with mocha tea. It was in the form of powder, so there was no such thing as tea leaves. Name a price. I'll take it even if it's twice the price you're paying for the ice cream. Also, I'll take as much as you have. Blower was still insistent. He didn't want to pass up on such premium tea leaves. Furthermore, it was extremely distressing to see such premium tea leaves being used as seasoning in a dessert. The green tea in our restaurant is only for mocha ice cream. We don't have a lot of it, so we're not selling it to the public. Mag shook his head. Double the price was not attractive to him at all. He warned, if you don't have anything else to say, please eat your meal quietly. You are not allowed to make any noise in the restaurant in case you disturb the other customers. Otherwise, you will be blacklisted and banned from the restaurant 10 times. I'll pay 10 times the price for your tea leaves. Blower gritted his teeth as he raised the price again. System, how about we switch to selling tea leaves? That's 10 times the profit. Meg's expression remained unchanged, but he was already screaming internally. Please remember who you are. You're the man who's going to become the god of cookery. How can you change your mind for such a small sum of money? How can a man like you bend over backwards for money? The system said with a pained expression. Let's split it 50-50, Meg interjected. Chapter 487. In that case, I can sell it when the time comes, but I can't just sell it like this. 10 times the price is clearly too low. Half a catty of tea leaves can only be sold for around 10,000 copper coins. If I were to auction it off, the price would skyrocket, and perhaps I could sell it for an astronomical price. Mag thought to himself, and then said to the system, System, give me 5 kilograms of tea leaves first, and I'll buy them from you at 5 times the original price. That's 10 times the original price, and I'll split it 50-50 with you. Put them in the closet on the 2nd floor. Ding. 50,000 copper coins have been successfully deducted. Ding. 5 catties of tea leaves have been delivered to the cabinet on the 2nd floor. Please accept them. The system's elated voice sounded without any hesitation. Very good. A faint smile appeared on Meg's face as he shook his head at Blower, and said, The restaurant has a rule that we only sell finished food. If you want to purchase ingredients, you can only do so through auctions. Perhaps there will be an auction for tea leaves in the future. You can keep an eye out for that. Auction. Not only Blower, but all of the other customers in the restaurant were also quite intrigued. The ingredients in the restaurant were very interesting to them. If the ingredients were to be auctioned off, they didn't know how much they would fetch, and whether anyone would buy them. After all, for most people, it would be better to just eat the food prepared by Mr. Mac at Amy's instead of paying more than the actual price of the food itself. It was delicious and time-consuming. After all, no one could learn Mr. Mac's cooking methods, so even if they were to obtain the same ingredients, they wouldn't be able to cook any delicious food. As expected, all businessmen are sly. Blower quickly figured out what was going on. If this were to be auctioned off, with the quality of these tea leaves, if tea lovers were to find out, the price would definitely be 10 times the original price. This restaurant owner was clearly planning to use the auction to make a huge profit. Host, you're not playing by the rules. If it were to be auctioned off, the price would definitely be more than 5 times the original price. This is fraud. The system's enraged voice sounded. Didn't I already give you half of the price? System, as a system, you must know how to be content with what you have. Only then will you be happy. If you are too calculative about gains and losses, then you will lose the true meaning of life. Mag thought to himself. In any case, the tea leaves were already in his hands, so he had the right to decide when the auction would be held. Once more people noticed the supreme-grade tea leaves, he could sell them in limited quantities. That would also be a good way to earn money. Young mistress, if you don't eat your ice cream soon, it's going to melt, Meg reminded Blower before making his way toward the kitchen. Blower faltered slightly upon seeing this. She looked down at a drop of green ice cream that was slowly sliding down the edge of the snowball, and was just about to fall off. She couldn't care less about her ladylike demeanor as she immediately twisted her neck to catch the drop of ice cream. The refreshing and sweet taste of the green tea melted in his mouth, and he couldn't help but indulge in the taste. The texture was refreshing, and there was no bitterness at all. Although he felt that it was a pity, he had to admit that this matcha ice cream was delicious. No matter how high the price is during the auction, I have to get my hands on these tea leaves. Blower made up his mind as he licked the drop of ice cream. Soon, he was completely immersed in the taste of the ice cream. Looks like young Mistress Shirley really likes those tea leaves. Next time when Mr. Mac auctions the tea leaves, I should secretly buy a portion for her. She'll definitely be very happy, right? Constantine thought to himself as he looked at Blower, who was happily munching on his ice cream. He rested his chin on his hand with a silly smile on his face as he looked on at Blower, feeling as if he were the one eating the ice cream. After finishing her blueberry ice cream, Amy made her way over to Blower, and whispered, "Big Sister Shirley, you have to be careful of that man over there. I feel like he's harboring dangerous thoughts toward you." Blower glanced at Constantine, who was looking at him with a perverted smile, and nodded in agreement with Amy's words. "Don't worry, Big Sister is super awesome. Here's your Yangju fried rice." Yabemia placed Blower's second plate of Yangju fried rice in front of him. "Thank you." Blower nodded. He looked at the half-eaten ice cream in his hand, then at the steaming Yangju fried rice on the table. He hadn't eaten like this for many years. This restaurant seemed to have some kind of strange magical power that was able to make someone like him succumb to it. He had lost all of his dreams, and that was an extremely frustrating feeling. But, it's really delicious. I can't control my appetite for now. I'll think about it after I finish eating. Blower tossed all of his internal conflict to the back of his mind as he continued to eat. Will the third young master be able to get to know young Mistress Sally? However, in his current state, it really isn't appropriate for him to get to know her. Otherwise, I don't know how to reconcile with her in the future. Ingwe was conflicted as he sat in the horse-drawn carriage outside the restaurant. Burp. Half an hour later, Blower burped as he made his way out of the restaurant. He rubbed his stomach before turning to look at the restaurant signboard with a determined expression, and said, "I'll definitely refrain from eating so much next time I come here." Come back next time, Big Sister Shirley. There's still a lot of delicious food waiting for you. Amy's voice sounded from within the restaurant. "Don't try to tempt me, I won't fall for it," Blower replied in a calm voice. However, he couldn't help but swallow as he turned around. That little girl was simply too much of a cheat. Whenever she ate something in front of him, he would feel his appetite increase by several levels. She was an absolute scapegoat. Third young master, did you make any progress with young Mistress Sally during your trip to the restaurant? Ingwe asked with an expectant expression as Blower climbed onto the horse-drawn carriage. "She's quite good-looking. Even though she's not as good-looking as me, she's not crippled." Blower nodded before falling silent. "And then?" Ingwe couldn't help but ask after a while. "And then?" "That's all." Blower splayed his hands open. "That's all? So you went in for almost an hour just to confirm that she's not crippled?" Ingwe stared at Blower with an incredulous expression. He felt as if his intelligence had been insulted. That's right. Isn't that very important? Think about it, if she's crippled, then she'll feel very inferior when she sees my true appearance. She'll clearly like me, but she won't dare to approach me. That'll make the mission a lot more difficult. Blower nodded with a justified expression. I think you only know how to eat. Ingwe rolled his eyes. How did you know? Blower turned to Ingwe with a hint of surprise on his face, and he couldn't help but praise, the food in his restaurant really is extraordinarily delicious. In particular, the rainbow fried rice and the ice cream dessert are the best things I've ever tasted in my life. Let's go back. Ingwe was a little dejected as he turned to the horse-drawn carriage driver. He suddenly felt as if he had made an extremely foolish decision by pinning his hopes on this unreliable third young master. Chapter 488. The horse-drawn carriage stopped in front of the elven embassy, and as soon as Ingwe and Blower disembarked, a middle-aged elf hurried over to them. He handed over a letter to Ingwe, and whispered, Master Ingwe, this is a secret letter from our elven race. It must be something important. The middle-aged elf turned to Blower with a curious expression. He had never seen such a beautiful young woman before. Why was she disembarking from the horse-drawn carriage with Ingwe? Ingwe undid the magic seal on the letter, and pulled it out to read for a while. His expression immediately changed as he turned to Blower, and said, Third. Young Mistress Shirley, come with me. I have something to tell you. All right. Blower nodded before following Ingwe into the embassy with a curious look on his face. What happened in the elven race? Blower asked after entering the room. Take a look for yourself. Ingwe handed over the letter in his hand. Princess Irina has come out of her cave. But I'm in Chaos City. I can't believe I missed out on something so important. Blower accepted the letter, and he immediately clasped a hand over his heart with a pained expression. That's not the main point. Master Schubert of the Kroll family has been slain, and Her Majesty has changed the elven law to abolish slavery. All of these things are going to have a massive impact on all of the major families in the elven race. In fact, they could even shake our very foundation. Young Master Blower, these are the things that a worthy successor should look at first. Ingwe was looking at Blower with an exasperated expression. Is that so? I think you've misunderstood the main point. The major families of the elven race only began to emerge after the conclusion of the war among species. After that, Helena's reforms led to the current situation where the elven race is divided into several major families. Are you referring to the foundation that we've accumulated over the past few decades? I think Helena and the major families have completely upended the elven race's foundation. The thousands of years of freedom are the true foundation of the elven race. Blower shook his head with a smile as he continued, Do you know why Princess Irina has so many admirers and supporters in the elven race? It's not because of how powerful she is, but because we see in her what an elf should be like. Noble, elegant, carefree, free and unrestrained. Ingwe fell silent at the sight of Blower's mocking smile, and only after a while did he put on a serious expression as he said, This is the general trend. All races have to do what they want, and make the elven race more powerful. Only then will we be able to protect more elves from being enslaved in the next calamity. While enslaving them, you tell them that this is to protect them from being enslaved by others. Then, during the war, they will be sent to the front lines to protect those who enslaved them from harm. Isn't this the great idea of the great families? Blower looked into Ingwe's eyes with a serious expression as he said, Ingwe, you've been through countless battles between species. I want to ask you, are the elves in the Wind Forest really happy? Even those lazy elves in the big families who are used to being served by others, are they really happy? Ingwe fell silent again, and Blower also didn't say anything. However, he was still staring intently at Ingwe, awaiting his answer. Perhaps you're indeed not suited to be the successor of the Billy family. Ingwe looked at Blower with a smile as he said, However, you're suited to be a thinker. The Billy family needs a thinker like you, and perhaps the entire elven race needs one as well. As such, I won't say this to anyone else, including the family leader. However, I hope that you won't say this to anyone else. At the very least, it's best that you keep these words to yourself until you're in the position that can change everything. There are some things that I only say to the right person. A smile also appeared on Blauer's face as he slowly relaxed his tightly clenched fists. Looking back at my close to 800 years of life, the most depressing period for the elven race wasn't when the wind forest was almost taken over by the demons and orcs during the war between species. Even then, the melodies singing in the wind forest had never ceased, and everyone was filled with hope and longing for the future. However, in the wind forest now, those joyful singing can no longer be heard. Picking wild fruits has become a job, and the days of sitting on the treetops for an entire day are long gone. Without the war, their lives have become even more depressing. That is indeed a very sad thing. Ingwe's expression was a little forlorn. That's why I've always stayed in Chaos City. Compared to the wind forest, this city is full of life and vitality. The soil of freedom is becoming more and more fertile, and I believe that a different flower will grow here one day. I just don't know if I'll have the chance to see it again. This is a very comfortable city, just like the wind forest in the past. A hint of a smile appeared on Ingwe's face as he looked at Blauer with renewed hope in his eyes, and said, "If you want to help the elven princess, then you have to be powerful enough. All of the major families have already divided up the elven race, and even Her Majesty can only abolish one or two of the elven laws. At times like this, I have to use my beauty to influence them." Blauer heaved a faint sigh before looking at Ingwe with a serious expression. "In that case, I'll leave it to you. Let's hope that the wind forest can once again sing songs of freedom. I only want to hear those songs once in my life." Ingwe also nodded with a smile. "The system has rejected your request and rolled its eyes at you." A string of words flashed through Meg's mind, followed by an eye-rolling emoji. "Are you happy to be cheeky, system?" Meg couldn't help but roll his eyes as well. It appeared that the system was still angry about the tea leaves. Meg was completely unperturbed by this, and he didn't feel guilty in the slightest. If he didn't scam the system, he wouldn't be able to make a lot of money. "Alright, looks like you don't want to earn this money. In that case, I'll have to use Amy's music box. Isn't there a dozen or so nursery rhymes in there? Even though the styles are a little mixed, it's still alright," Meg said calmly as he prepared to get the music box. "Host, how can a classy restaurant play music like Gokuraku Jodo while the customers are eating? If their legs are shaking while they're eating, how can they enjoy their meal? This is a disaster." The system's voice was tinged with a hint of grief. "What does that have to do with anything? It fully showcases the uniqueness of our restaurant, and it's a completely different experience for the customers," Meg replied with a nonchalant expression. The system said in a serious voice, "The god of cookery restaurant has to pay attention to every detail. Just the right amount of music can greatly enhance the style of the restaurant. Different restaurants have different musical pairings, and this pairing has to be based on all right, Mr. Vegetable, I'll have a J-Cho music box first. How much is it?" Meg cut off the system. Chapter 489. Holy fuck. System, how dare you say you're not using NetEase? Can't you just go to QQ Music and get a membership? Meg couldn't help but complain. "You're a Yoon Village resident alive and a Yoon Village ghost dead," the system said solemnly. "I'll pay for the membership." Meg pursed his lips. "I'll do it right away," the system's cheerful voice sounded. "Motherfucker." Meg cursed in his heart. After a round of intense bargaining, Meg finally bought 1,000 classical songs from the system at the price of one membership and 3,000 copper coins, as well as J-Cho's complete music package, all of which had lossless sound quality. J-Cho released a new song recently. Meg looked at the music list on the tablet in his hand. The song at the top was "Leave Me Alone If You Don't Love Me," but it was grey. "It's not out yet. It's just a preview. If you want to buy it after it's out, you can pay more. The system will provide lossless sound quality music, and you'll definitely be satisfied," the system said slyly. "I'm the one who gave you the membership." Meg rolled his eyes. However, the song title was a little arrogant. He was quite curious about what kind of new song this man, who had accompanied him throughout his youth, would release. "Let's try out the sound system first." Meg didn't think too much about it. He got up and smiled at Amy, who was chasing Ugly Duckling around the restaurant. Amy, I'm going to play the music. Don't be scared. It's just an oversized music box. Sally and Yarbemia had both gone out, so there was only Amy, and Ugly Duckling in the restaurant. Is it an oversized music box? Emi's eyes were full of curiosity and expectation as she looked around. Then let's listen to Alice first. Meg tapped the screen lightly. As a 10th grade amateur piano player, this was the first piano piece he learned when he was a child. Back then, with the excuse of cultivating his interests and hobbies, he was forced by his mother to learn a lot of random things. Although it turned out that these things were useless when he grew up, it was true that learning a musical instrument could improve one's temperament. The soothing and beautiful sound of the piano rang out. This divine tune, which was widely used in the end of classes, phone calls, listening tests, and 10,086 manual service waiting tones, did indeed have a unique magical power. The light and lively tune made people feel more relaxed. The stereo effect of the omnidirectional surround sound was indeed incomparable to ordinary sound systems. The delicate sound quality was impeccable even to Meg. As the music rang in their ears, they suddenly felt as if they were sitting in a concert hall, facing the great musician alone and listening to his moving piano solo. The corners of Meg's mouth curled up slightly. It was as if he could see his little self sitting on a long chair, laboriously tapping on the piano keys, while his mother sat behind him, quietly watching him. At that time, they weren't so busy. Although they were a little strict, at least they were still there. Amy's laughter interrupted Meg's train of thought, and he turned to find that she was dancing with Ugly Duckling to the music. Her dance was a little clumsy and very casual, but the two of them were so adorable that even Meg couldn't help but burst into laughter. Father, so our restaurant has turned into an oversized music box? We live in a music box, and the customers eat in a music box, Amy asked excitedly as she looked at Meg. Yes, that's right. Music makes people happy, so we have to impart this joy and make our customers happy as well. Meg nodded with a smile. He looked at Amy, and his heart was filled with satisfaction. He cherished the time that he could still spend with her. At the very least, he wouldn't regret it in the future. Meg lowered the volume of the music slightly, and placed the tablet on the counter. The beautiful music was enjoyable, but after all, he wasn't opening a concert hall. Instead, he was opening a restaurant, and the food was what he really wanted to show his customers. Music could be a side dish, but he couldn't let it steal the limelight of the food and distract the customers from eating. Xiao Mi, father still has something fun to show you. Come upstairs with me. Mag stroked Amy's hair with a smile before picking her up in his arms. He also scooped Ugly Duckling into his arms before making his way upstairs. Something fun? Father, what is it? Amy's eyes lit up with curiosity. You'll find out soon. Meg smiled as he carried Amy to the second floor, and gently pushed open the door to the room on the second floor. The door slowly opened, and a children's playground filled with toys and amusement facilities appeared before their eyes. Wow, Amy's eyes widened with incredulity as she stared at the things in the room. Meow tilde Ugly Duckling's eyes also lit up with excitement. Father, is this really for Amy? Amy turned to Meg with incredulity in her eyes. Of course. This is a playground specially prepared for Amy. You can invite other children to play at home in the future. Meg nodded with a smile. When the restaurant was busy at night, Amy would often lie behind the counter in boredom, waiting for the opening hours to end. Meg's heart ached for her, and this was why he had spent so many gold coins to make the system a playground. Father, you're the best. Amy hugged Meg's neck and kissed him on the cheek. She didn't have any toys in the past, but now she even had a playground. In the future, she could invite Jessica, Daphne, and the others to play, and they would definitely love it. This is just a small playground. Father will build a bigger one for you in the future. There will be super big Ferris wheels, merry-go-rounds, and roller coasters. It will be 1,000 times, no, 10,000 times bigger than this playground. After being kissed and praised by Amy, Mag felt that his ego had swelled, and he said confidently, "It's fine." Really? Amy's eyes lit up immediately. Although she didn't know what the things her father was talking about were, she already felt that this playground was very big. If it was 1,000 times, no, 10,000 times bigger than this playground, then it would definitely be super big and super fun. Of course it's real. Father will build one for Amy when he makes a lot of money. Meg also suddenly realized that he seemed to have boasted, but seeing Amy's expectant eyes, how could he bear to take back his words? He nodded seriously. Chapter 490. I've been out for more than a month. I wonder how the elven race is doing, and if my mother is worried about me. Sally walked on the street, preparing to go back to the Gaia Inn to tidy up her room. Although the wages of the inn were pitiful, the inn provided a place to stay, and the owner was very nice, so she insisted on working 2 jobs a day. Who was that elf just now? Did she really grow up outside the Wind Forest? Ever since they were young, they had always said that the elves outside the Wind Forest were all abandoned by the god of life. They hadn't been baptized by the god of life, and hadn't been recognized by the god of life. That was why they were ugly and weak. But that elf today, I can feel that she's not weaker than me, and she's very beautiful. Who's lying? Sally was very confused. She hadn't met any other elves in the past month, and after discovering this, she was suddenly interested in finding out more. Maybe I can talk to her next time. Princess Irina had once said that the outside world was completely different from what they said. This sentence was deeply engraved in her heart, and she made up her mind. I'm going to find Luna and go to Mammoth for dinner later. Should I wear men's clothes today? Or women's clothes? In the City Lord's castle, Vivian looked at the clothes in the wardrobe, and fell into deep thought. I've got it. I'll wear men's clothes. That way, Mr. Mac will give up, and he won't have to flirt with Luna's heart again. After a long while, Vivian snapped her fingers, and then picked a loose set of men's clothes from the wardrobe. Ms. Luna, Amy is so awesome. Can I learn magic too? I want to learn it so much. You can all learn magic, but you're still young. You have to learn the basics first, and then you can take the magic test next year. Those who pass can officially start learning magic. Luna smiled as she patted the little girl's head, and felt a little helpless. Today, Amy had defeated the powerful Magus Tower on her own, and instantly became the little hero of Chaos School. At the same time, many students became very interested in learning magic, including the children in the lower grades. She had already had this conversation more than 10 times, and her enthusiasm was much higher than in previous years. The teachers of the Magic Academy should be very happy this year. Little Amy is so amazing. She's only been learning magic for a month, and she's already defeated such a powerful opponent. Mr. Meg's judgment was right. Moreover, he is indeed a genius. Luna looked out of the window with a smile on her face. Today, she had received a letter from Rodu. According to her grandfather, he had demonstrated that the decimal system was indeed more convenient and efficient than the current system in the Roth Empire, and he was pushing for a reform of the decimal system. He wanted her to invite Meg to Rodu again, and if Meg still refused, then he would most likely come to Chaos City to meet him in person. Novan, I heard that you've been preparing to expand Chaos School recently. The conference at the Magic Academy hadn't concluded yet, so Crassus and Novan left early. As soon as they walked out of the conference room, Crassus turned to Novan with a smile. That's right. Chaos School isn't small, but compared to the entire Chaos City, there are still many children who don't have the opportunity to attend school. Especially those children from poor families. Studying is supposed to be a chance for them to leave the swamp of poverty, but they can't get this chance. Novan nodded. How big are you planning to expand it? Crassus asked. I'm still communicating with the City Lord's castle to see how much money they're willing to allocate. However, it hasn't been easy for Michael in the past 2 years. The construction of all of the facilities in Chaos City has basically emptied the City Lord's castle's finances, so they probably won't be able to fork out much money for Chaos School this time. Novan's brows furrowed with concern, and the wrinkles on his face seemed to have deepened. Let's go, I'll show you something. Crassus looked at Novan, and led the way. What is it? Novan asked. You'll know when we get there. Crassus didn't even turn around. What's this? Novan followed Crassus into a room on the first floor of a Magic Academy building, and was perplexed at the sight of a pile of wooden boxes that almost filled the entire room. Open it and take a look. Crassus kept him in suspense with a smile. Novan raised a hand toward a wooden box beside him, and the lid of the wooden box was immediately opened. Golden light shone from within the box, and it was filled with gold coins, silver coins, and dragon coins. What's this? A hint of surprise appeared in Novan's eyes as he waved a hand through the air, upon which all of the boxes beside him were opened. The boxes were filled with coins, most of which were gold coins, with silver coins and dragon coins mixed within. The entire room seemed to have become a lot brighter with the golden light emanating from the boxes. Crassus smiled, and said, "You can take half of the money here to expand the school. Take it as a loan from me. There's no interest, and you're not in a hurry to pay me back." Novan looked at Crassus in silence for a while before lamenting, "It's been so many years. I still owe you. Don't worry, I'm not worried about you. You'll definitely pay me back." Crassus waved his hand nonchalantly, and pointed at the gold coins as he said, "The remaining half is for little Amy. Building a magic academy costs a lot of money. Your name will be recorded in the history of Chaos School, Teacher Crassus." Novan smiled as he turned to walk out of the door, and said, "I'll get them to do an inventory as soon as possible. If we start construction now, we should be able to finish it before the start of the next semester. Then, we'll be able to enroll more students next year." Sure enough, anything related to the students is more important than anyone else. I wanted him to treat me to a meal. Crassus shook his head with a resigned expression, and also left. At the entrance of the city lord's castle, Gustav turned to Dracula, and loudly asked, "Dracula, the final agreement has been signed. Tauros and I are going back to our race to report on our mission. Would you like to come back with us?" "There's no need for that. Our relationship isn't good enough for us to go back together, is it? Demons don't have any friends, especially between demons." Dracula looked at Gustav lazily with a smile. "That's true. Farewell." Tauros nodded before climbing onto the black boar's back. He lashed the boar's back with his whip, and it began to gallop down the street. "Farewell." Gustav transformed into his Spider-Man form, and the space around him rippled as he disappeared in the blink of an eye. Chapter 491. Meg played with Amy and Ugly Duckling in the small amusement park for the entire afternoon. Although the place wasn't very big, the facilities were all very intricate and small, so it didn't take up too much space. There was a seesaw, a two-seater merry-go-round, bumper cars. There was everything that one could think of, and the father-daughter duo's laughter could be heard from time to time. Amy's hair was plastered to her forehead by sweat, and she looked at Meg with excitement in her eyes as she said, "This is so fun, father. This amusement park is so fun, and it's purple. It's so beautiful. I have to bring Jessica and Daphne here. They'll definitely love it." "All right, we'll invite them over when they're free." Meg wiped the sweat off Amy's forehead with a smile. He looked at Ugly Duckling, who had just gotten off the merry-go-round, and was completely disoriented. He picked up the two little ones, and walked toward the bathroom as he said, "All right, let's stop here for the afternoon. I'll give you two a bath, and then I'll go downstairs to open the shop." "Yay. Amy wants to play with bubbles." Amy yelled excitedly. Meow tilde Ugly Duckling immediately woke up from its daze upon hearing the word bath. It immediately stared at Meg with wide eyes before twisting its body in an attempt to escape from Meg's grasp. "Ugly Duckling, if you don't take a bath, then don't sleep on my bed tonight." "I don't want to sleep with a dirty guy," Amy warned Ugly Duckling. Meow tilde Ugly Duckling looked up at Amy, and after a while, it rested its head on Meg's hand with an aggrieved expression, as if it had accepted its fate. "You still have to take a bath," Meg said with a smile. Cats didn't like water or baths, but Amy liked to hug Ugly Duckling all day long, so he was very concerned about Ugly Duckling's hygiene. He washed it once a day. After placing Ugly Duckling into its own little basin, Amy also squatted down and gently splashed water on it. The fluffy Ugly Duckling was instantly drenched and pitiful. After applying the shower gel, Only its pitiful little head was left exposed. It suddenly shook its head, and the foam splashed onto the two of them, eliciting a burst of giggles from Amy. After bathing the two little guys and putting on clean clothes, Meg also took a shower and changed into a clean chef suit before taking them downstairs. Yarbemia and Sally were sitting downstairs, looking at each other in silence. It was a little awkward. After getting to know each other better, Yarbemia became more talkative, while Sally was more aloof. Most of the time, they just sat there with a glass of water in their hands. Amy's clothes are so nice today. Upon hearing footsteps, Yarbemia and Sally both turned to look at the counter. Yarbemia looked at Amy with a smile before waving at Ugly Duckling. "Come here, Ugly Duckling." Ugly Duckling looked up at her before lowering its eyes lazily. It rubbed its little head against Amy's feet and raised its little paws to ask for a hug. "Stay here by yourself. No hugs." Amy shook her head before running over to Yarbemia. She raised her arms and said coquettishly, "Big sister MIA, I want a hug." "All right, let's hug our little princess Amy." Yarbemia picked up Amy with a smile and sat her down on her lap. "It's so soft and comfortable," Amy murmured as she rested her head on Yarbemia's chest. She found a comfortable position and closed her eyes. "Little girl, you're so pretty. You're going to be a great beauty when you grow up." Yarbemia looked down at Amy's exquisite face, and her eyelashes fluttered slightly. She was going to be a little beauty now. "Her boobs are really big." Sally looked down at Yarbemia's chest, and then down at her own. She was instantly a little dejected. Meow tilde Ugly Duckling sat on the ground and looked at Amy in Yarbemia's arms with a pitiful expression. Meg walked into the kitchen with a smile. He liked the harmonious environment of the restaurant the most. Sally and Mia's personalities made him feel comfortable getting along with them. For now, it looked like he wouldn't have to hire any more waiters before the restaurant expanded. Meg was in the kitchen preparing the ingredients for dinner when he suddenly sensed someone behind him. He turned around to find that it was Yarbemia standing in the doorway. "Boss, I'm just looking around," Yarbemia hurriedly said with a panicked expression. "Come in if you want to. The restaurant's business is getting better and better. I was just about to give you the job of making ice cream and filling Ruggiamo. Would you like to do it? If you want to learn other dishes, I can teach you." Meg looked at Yarbemia with a smile. In reality, he couldn't see anything from the doorway, so he was sure that MIA was telling the truth. "You want me to do it?" Yarbemia's eyes immediately lit up. However, she quickly waved her hand and said, "No, boss. I'm very stupid, and I won't be able to do it well. I'll ruin the restaurant's reputation." "How do you know if you can do it well if you don't try? As long as you have a sincere heart to cook for the customers, you'll definitely be able to do it well." Meg looked at her with a smile, and his eyes were filled with encouragement. "Can I really do it?" Yarbemia looked into Meg's eyes, and her gentle gaze was filled with encouragement, just like her mother's. However, she was still a little hesitant. "Of course you can. MIA is a good girl who can take all the orders and serve the dishes." Meg nodded with certainty. "Yes, Big Sister MIA is super awesome. Amy wants to eat Big Sister Mia's ice cream." Amy had appeared at the doorway of the kitchen, and she looked at Yarbemia expectantly. "You can do it. You can do everything well." Sally also looked at Yarbemia with a smile, and her eyes were also filled with encouragement. "Then, can I give it a try?" Yarbemia was suddenly filled with confidence. She took a step forward and looked at Mag as she said, "Don't worry. Of course you can. It's fine even if you don't succeed in 1 or 2 tries. The weather is so hot, so we can have some ice cream." Meg nodded with a smile before leading Yarbemia over to the ice cream machine, and he began to explain to her how to use the machine. Even though the ice cream machine was a high-end machine that was fully automated, it was very simple to operate. All one had to do was to mix all of the ingredients and operate the machine in an idiot-like manner. The most difficult part was to catch the snowball perfectly at the center of the eggshell when it was falling. The second snowball had to land perfectly at the center of the first snowball so that the 2 snowballs would remain stable without destroying each other's shapes. These 2 steps were indeed very technical. At the very least, Meg had practiced many times in the test field for the god of cookery to be able to master them. Let's try it out first. Focus and press this button, and the ice cream machine will be activated. When the ice cream ball falls, use this eggshell to catch it. Meg picked up an eggshell and began to explain to Yarbemia. Yarbemia stood off to the side with an earnest expression, occasionally asking a question or two. She was used to operating the dishwasher, so she was already immune to the miraculous effects that could be triggered with a single press, so she didn't dwell too much on this topic. Young master, are you going out? In the Elven embassy, Ingwe was just about to leave when he caught sight of Blower. Chapter 492. Luna. At the gate of Chaos School, Vivian waved at Luna, who had just walked out of the school. School had already ended a while ago, so there weren't many students at the gate. Why are you dressed like that? Luna stared blankly at Vivian for a moment before quickly walking up to her. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Have you been smitten by me? Vivian narrowed her eyes as she looked at Luna. She reached out to hook a finger under Luna's chin as she asked in a low voice. Not at all. Luna took a nimble step backward to evade Vivian's hand with a smile. Sigh, women are so fickle. Last time, you said you wanted to be with me, but in the blink of an eye, you've turned your back on me. What am I supposed to do now? Vivian said with a pained expression, as if she had received a huge blow. All right, let's hurry up and get going. If we're late, we'll have to wait very long in line. Luna dragged Vivian toward a horse-drawn carriage with a resigned expression as she said, besides, we're at the gate of Chaos School, and you're wearing men's clothes. It'll be bad if the students see us like this. What's wrong with that? Can't a teacher fall in love? Principal Novan didn't say that students can't fall in love. Luna, you shouldn't be so old-fashioned. This is Chaos City, not Rodu. You should live freely in the free city. Vivian looked at Luna with an exasperated expression. I don't want to fall in love at all. I just want to focus on teaching, then pay more attention to those poor children. Besides, there are still many things that I need to do. Luna shook her head. What else do you want to do? Vivian turned to Luna with a question. Luna turned to look at the Chaos School sign, and a smile appeared on her face as she said, there are still many things that I want to do. After I learn how to spread freedom and equality to this world from Principal Novan, I want to go back to Rodu and set up a school to teach the children what equality and freedom are. Mr. Mac's cooking is so delicious. Can you really bear to go back to Rodu? Vivian asked. Luna faltered upon hearing that. She hesitated momentarily before gritting her teeth, and saying, I'll definitely go back. That's what I told myself when I chose to stay in Chaos City. This is my dream. When I was dreaming, it was all because of a spicy grilled fish, Vivian replied. I won't lose my dream because of a grilled fish, Luna said with a serious expression. Then let's hurry up and get going. I really miss my delicious grilled fish. Vivian pulled Luna onto the horse-drawn carriage and instructed the coachman to set off. Vivian, what is your dream? My dream, of course. In the past, I just wanted to be a salted fish that didn't need to move. I just wanted to spend the rest of my days lying around. Now that I can live comfortably, there's no need for me to continue lying around. Why don't I become a teacher too? Don't you hate children the most? That's right. I hate children the most. But, sometimes, I feel that they're quite cute. I can feel a lot of vitality from children. I quite like them. It was almost time for dinner, and a long line had formed in front of Amy's again. Crassus and Julian hadn't arrived yet, so even though there were occasional conflicts between the sweet and savory factions, they were still quite harmonious overall. Constantine stood at the back of the line, looking around from time to time as if he was looking for someone. Is young Mistress Shirley coming back for dinner tonight? Constantine thought to himself with a conflicted expression. When he had asked for Shirley's contact information at noon, she had completely ignored him and left on a horse-drawn carriage. He was feeling a little frustrated. After flirting with girls for so many years, this was the first time that he had been ignored by a woman like this, and that only served to further ignite his desire to conquer her. However, He had to admit that Shirley gave him a different feeling from the other women he had encountered in the past. He wanted to look up to her and treat her with caution. That horse-drawn carriage. Right at this moment, a horse-drawn carriage drove toward Mammy Restaurant. Constantine's eyes lit up immediately. He recognized this horse-drawn carriage. Miss Shirley had boarded this horse-drawn carriage in the afternoon. His eyes were fixed on the horse-drawn carriage, and he was thinking about what he should do to make her fall in love with him when the person he was thinking about alighted from the horse-drawn carriage. The horse-drawn carriage stopped not far away from Amy's, and Blower strode down the wooden steps in an elegant manner. He looked up at Amy's line, and his gaze fell on Constantine, who was standing at the very back of the line, and he faltered slightly. Why is it that guy again? He's really like a lingering spirit. Blower's brows furrowed. He had been harassed by this guy at noon, and he didn't think that he would encounter him again at night. Was he staying at Amy's? This. Why is it a male elf? Constantine's eyes also widened with incredulity as he stared at Blower. He clearly remembered that Shirley had boarded this horse-drawn carriage, but a male elf had emerged from it. Even though this male elf was also very handsome and elegant, he was definitely not young Mistress Shirley. He had initially thought that perhaps Shirley would alight from the horse-drawn carriage as they were traveling together. However, the horse-drawn carriage immediately turned around and left, leaving only the male elf behind. Who is this guy? Why did he alight from young Mistress Shirley's horse-drawn carriage? Constantine wore a disappointed expression as he appraised Blower with a serious expression. The more he looked at him, the more peculiar he felt. For some reason, his heart rate was accelerating. What's wrong with me? Why is my heart rate accelerating at the sight of a male elf? This guy is indeed very beautiful, perhaps even more so than some women, but he really is a male elf. No, I must be feeling like this because I'm too disappointed that young Mistress Shirley didn't come, Constantine thought to himself. He took a deep breath to calm himself down before turning to Blower with a smile, and said, "Greetings, sir. May I ask what your relationship with young Mistress Shirley is? I saw you alight from her horse-drawn carriage. Is young Mistress Shirley coming to the restaurant for dinner tonight?" Blower raised an eyebrow upon hearing this. He had initially wanted to pretend that he didn't know this guy, but who would have thought that he would remember his horse-drawn carriage and directly ask about his relationship with Shirley? "I'm just curious, I don't mean any harm," Constantine hurriedly said upon seeing Blower's displeased expression. Chapter 493. Many of the customers at the entrance of the restaurant turned to look at Blower. Beautiful young women were quite common, but it was rare to see a man more beautiful than them. Furthermore, he was a beautiful elf, so he immediately attracted the attention of many women. Even the men couldn't help but take a second look at him. "Sister." Constantine looked at Blower with a surprised expression. He suddenly discovered that Blower's features did indeed bear some resemblance to Shirley's. If they were siblings, then that would explain why he had come out of Shirley's horse-drawn carriage. "That's right." Blower nodded in response. He didn't want to talk to Constantine any further. "My name is Constantine. You really do look like young Mistress Shirley." Constantine looked at Blower with a smile. After learning that Blower was Shirley's brother, he was very relieved. At the same time, he began to think about how he could get closer to Blower. "Beautiful people all look alike," Blower replied in a calm voice. He didn't really like this guy, but seeing as he had a good eye for beauty, Blower wasn't in a hurry to kill him. "Indeed. There are very few elves as beautiful as you and young Mistress Shirley in this world." Constantine nodded with a genuine expression. He was becoming more and more fond of Blower's looks. Perhaps it was because of young Mistress Shirley? He consoled himself in his heart. There are so many people lining up so early in the morning. As expected, business at Mr. Mac's restaurant is booming. I feel like it won't be easy to come here for a meal in the future. The horse-drawn carriage stopped not far away from the restaurant, and Vivian emerged. She heaved a forlorn sigh at the sight of the long line. Mr. Meg's food is worth lining up in advance. That's what all of the customers are thinking. Luna also emerged with a smile. Looks like even our teacher Luna is captivated by Mr. Mac's food. That's a very dangerous sign. Vivian chuckled. I know what I want. You, on the other hand, don't lose yourself over a grilled fish. Luna looked at Vivian with a smile. I don't even want a child. How can I become a stepmother? You don't have to worry about that. Vivian said nonchalantly. She jumped down from the carriage and held Luna's hand as she got off. This year's oranges seem to be growing quite well. Also, it should be the peak season for picking oranges, right? Luna glanced at an old farmer who was sitting down with 2 baskets of oranges not far away. Vivian looked at Luna and patted her on the shoulder. I'm going to buy some oranges. Stay here and don't move. It's okay, aren't we here to eat? Luna said with a smile, but Vivian was already walking towards the old farmer. She could only stand there helplessly. Vivian knew that she liked to eat oranges. The oranges are not bad, and they're cheap, so I bought some more. You can take them back later. Vivian soon returned with a basket of oranges. She took 2 of them and put the rest back into the carriage. She handed one of the oranges to Luna. Thank you, Luna said with a smile as she looked at the orange in her hand. The golden orange was about the size of an adult's fist. Its skin was golden and smooth, and there was a small green leaf at the top. It was obvious that it had just been picked. The skin was peeled off easily, and thin white strands were drawn out from the surface of the orange. The thin, tender skin was wrapped around the reddish-golden orange flesh. The sweet and sour scent of the orange wafted over, and just looking at it made one's mouth water. Luna gently peeled off a piece of the orange. The translucent orange flesh could be seen through the light, and she could clearly see the plump orange flesh inside. She put it to her mouth and took a bite. Plump orange juice flowed out from the flesh of the orange, and a hint of sourness instantly spread through her mouth. It was as if she had been placed in an orange forest. At a glance, there were yellow oranges all over the mountains. The aura of autumn became extremely clear in that instant, and she couldn't help but relax. She wanted to feel the wind and the delicious orange in her mouth. It's so sweet and delicious. Luna opened her eyes and looked at Vivian with a happy smile on her face. Then eat more. There are still plenty of oranges left. Vivian also smiled. There was a hint of sympathy in her eyes as she looked at Luna. She was a well-bred young lady, but she couldn't even bear to eat oranges. When would this little girl treat her better? Millimeter HM. Luna nodded. She also placed the remaining half of the orange in her hand into her mouth with a blissful smile on her face. Vivian silently peeled the orange in her hand before placing it in Luna's hand. After eating 2 oranges, Luna turned to Vivian and said, I feel like I'm almost full. That won't do. I was going to treat you to a sumptuous meal tonight. If you're only full after eating 2 oranges, that would be a huge loss. Vivian raised an eyebrow as she led Luna toward the back of the line. Look, that elf is so beautiful. He's even more beautiful than a young lady. The 2 of them were at the very back of the line, and Vivian immediately caught sight of Blower. She whispered to Luna. Indeed, he really is very handsome. Luna took a glance at Blower, and was also a little stunned by his beauty. He had long golden hair and a set of handsome features. The fact that he could be described as beautiful was a testament to just how stunningly handsome he was. Blower seemed to have sensed someone looking at him from behind, and he turned around. His gaze lingered on Vivian for a while. This man was quite handsome, but he was giving off a strange feeling. He couldn't quite put his finger on it. Perhaps it was a type of mutual attraction between good-looking men, or perhaps there was something about this man that piqued his interest. What is he trying to do? Vivian glared back at Blower at the sight of him staring at her. There were countless good-looking men in the world, and she wasn't infatuated enough to fall in love with every single one of them. Blower withdrew his gaze. He didn't want to waste any time on irrelevant people. This fellow actually dares to ignore me. Vivian raised an eyebrow. She was quite uncomfortable being stared at, but she was also quite displeased to be ignored. She was struck by the urge to beat someone up. Whoosh, a gust of wind swept up, and a massive bat that obscured the entire sky appeared in the air above the Aden Square. In the blink of an eye, It had arrived in the air above Immerse. It withdrew its wings, and transformed into a man in black. He looked down at the line with furrowed brows, and then turned his gaze to the line at the very front with a smile as he murmured to himself, "I'm a 9th-tier vampire, so I should be able to cut in line, right?" "You want to cut in line?" Julian had just made his way over to Immerse when he raised his head to look at Dracula, who was about to land at the very front of the line. Chapter 494. Dracula stopped abruptly in mid-air under the gaze of all the customers. He looked at Julian and Crassus, who were walking towards the restaurant, and his expression changed slightly. He jumped back nimbly and landed on the ground. He forced a smile, and said, "Why would I do that? As a noble vampire, I, Dracula, would never do something like cutting the queue. Julian, Lord Crassus, please do as you please. I'll go to the back of the line first." As soon as Dracula turned around, the smile on his face disappeared, and a few drops of cold sweat trickled down his cheeks. Although admitting defeat was a shameful thing for a level 9 vampire ancestor, it was obviously a wise choice to admit defeat in front of 2 level 10 great mags, the God of Fire and the Lord of Ice. "What's wrong with this world? I almost got into trouble when I cut the queue. Luckily, I stopped in time. Otherwise, I would have been hung up and beaten. These two are the ferocious people who annihilated the man-eating demons." Dracula sighed in his heart, and quickened his pace, afraid that Julian and Crassus would stop him. Today, little Amy defeated a 4th-tier mage with melee magic in the challenge against the Mage Tower. "It turns out that melee magic is still far stronger than long-range magic," Crassus said to Julian proudly. He could not be bothered with Dracula at all. A 4th-tier mage. Is little boss's strength already so terrifying? A 4th-tier mage at the age of 4. Such talent is simply a peerless genius. Even Princess Irina back then could not become a 4th-tier mage at the age of 4, right? The customers at the entrance of the restaurant were in an uproar when they heard Crassus' words. They saw Amy acting cute every day, and subconsciously thought of her as a harmless little girl. Now that they suddenly heard that she had defeated a 4th-tier mage, the shock in their hearts was indescribable. A 4th-tier magician would be a mid-tier magician. In the Castellan's castle and the Grey Temple, a magician would be able to hold the position of a small team leader. Looks like little Amy is Mammoth's hidden expert. She wasn't trying to act cute when she said she was super fierce. She really is super fierce. Harrison sighed. It looked like he couldn't underestimate little Amy anymore. George nodded with a smile, and said, "That's right. When Palmer came home today, he told me that little boss had become Chaos School's little hero. He defeated 2 powerful magic casters from the Magus Tower on his own, and forced the Magus Tower to admit defeat. A 4-year-old magician of the 4th rank? It seems that the little girl is indeed a super genius. It is necessary to let the clan know about this. Those juniors must not provoke this little girl who has 2 terrifying masters." Count thought to himself when he heard everyone's conversation. He's just a 4th-tier magic caster. In a few days, even a 5th-tier magic caster will be defeated by Amy's ice magic. Julian pursed his lips. He wasn't angry at Crassus' words at all. Instead, he appeared to be very confident. His words created quite a stir among the customers. How long had it been since Julian and Crassus had accepted a disciple? Remi's strength had improved so quickly that she was most likely going to break one record after another in the magic world. As expected of someone whom the Lord of Ice and the Lord of Fire were fighting over to take in as their disciple, even going as far as to set aside their century-old grudge to take in. When that time comes, 6th-tier magic casters will already be trembling under little Amy's magic caster's staff. Crassus also didn't back down. He walked to the front of the sweet team. Who knows? Julian chuckled coldly. He stood in front of the savory team. His icy aura clashed with the fiery aura of the sweet and savory team, and the atmosphere between the sweet and savory teams became tense again. An elven brat. Dracula was quite relieved that Crassus and Julian weren't targeting him. He glanced at Blower as he passed by him, and murmured to himself with a hint of surprise in his eyes. It sure is rare to see a self-proclaimed demon. Blower looked at Dracula with a hint of mockery in his eyes. Are you talking about me, little brat? Dracula stopped in his tracks and raised his chin to look at Blower with a disdainful expression as he said, Do vampires have noble bloodlines? Among demons, we only drink blood, and our actions are noble and graceful. Is that so? I heard that there was a vampire who was forced by the elven princess to eat grass for several days on Demon Island. That must be one of the elven gentleman vampires who only drink fresh blood, right? Blower asked Dracula with a curious expression. All of the customers around them were trying to suppress their laughter. Even though they didn't know whether Blower was telling the truth, they couldn't help but burst into laughter at the thought of a vampire being forced to eat grass. That little brat even knows about something like that. Dracula glared at Blower. However, if he were to admit to this at a time like this, he would be too ashamed to eat in this restaurant in the future. As such, his expression quickly returned to normal, and he cleared his throat as he said, How could something like that happen? Even if it did happen, it definitely wouldn't be a vampire, and it definitely wouldn't be me. Is that so? Blower looked at Dracula with a skeptical expression. Why was this guy in such a hurry to draw a line between himself and him? Of course it's true. Us vampires have extremely strong self-esteem and character. We definitely wouldn't eat grass, Dracula replied with a firm expression. Then what flavor do you eat for tofu pudding? Constantine suddenly asked. Of course it's salty. Dracula looked at the smiles on everyone's faces, and suddenly felt as if he had been completely humiliated. He glared at Constantine as he turned to walk toward the back of the line. That's a good question. Blower turned to Constantine with a hint of approval in his eyes. He didn't think that Constantine would be able to ask such a profound question. It was quite a pleasant feeling to be able to see a demon embarrass himself. You're far too kind. May I know your name, brother? Constantine turned to Blower with a smile. He was initially feeling a little flustered after being glared at by Dracula, but Blower's praise filled him with energy again. Blower replied in an indifferent manner before turning away from Constantine. Blower. At the very least, knowing his name is a form of improvement. Young Mistress Shirley won't be able to make any progress, so perhaps I can find a breakthrough from her brother. Constantine's eyes lit up with elation. Why aren't you arguing today? Chapter 495. The restaurant entrance instantly fell silent. All of the customers looked on with peculiar expressions as Amy sat down with Ugly Duckling in her arms and rested her chin on the kitten's head with an expectant look on her face. Even though they were already used to Amy sitting on a stool and cheering them on, they still felt rather conflicted when they heard her say those words with a hint of disappointment in her eyes. They felt as if their debate for the sake of their beliefs had turned into a performance. Amy looked at the silent customers and pondered for a while before turning to Crassus and Julian with a curious look on her face. Master Halfbeard, Master Turtle, which one of you is more powerful? All of the customers standing behind Crassus and Julian immediately took a few steps back. Everyone was also rather curious. Crassus and Julian had been rivals for over 100 years, and they were now the leaders of the sweet and savory factions, so everyone was very curious to see which one of them was more powerful. Little Amy, what do you think? You used the melee magic that I taught you to defeat your most powerful opponent today. Crassus wasn't in a hurry to express his opinion. Instead, he turned to Amy with a question. But Master Halfbeard, didn't I use long-range magic to defeat him in the end? Amy looked at Crassus with an innocent expression. Crassus' expression immediately stiffened upon hearing this. Did you see that? Even little Amy said that long-range magic is the most powerful. Crassus, your melee magic is nothing. Julian turned to Crassus with a smug look on his face. But Master Turtle, I used the fireball magic that Master Halfbeard taught me, Amy said with a smile. Julian's eyes widened. He didn't think that something like this would happen. So, I think Master Halfbeard's melee magic is super powerful, and Master Turtleshell's Flames of Extreme Frost is also super powerful. However, I don't know which one is more powerful, Amy said with a conflicted expression. This little guy is really too naughty. He's trying to provoke a fight between two great magicians. However, I'm also looking forward to it. I've never seen two great magicians fight before, Vivian said with a smile. Amy isn't trying to sow discord. Her performance in the duel today was nothing short of stunning. Both her long-range magic and melee magic are superb. If I were her, I would definitely struggle over which one is better. Luna shook her head with a smile. She had personally witnessed Amy's stunning performance today. Who is the little guy's mother? How could she have such powerful aptitude? There's no magic aura emanating from that shop owner's body, so there's no way he's a magic caster. In that case, the only possibility is that she inherited her aptitude from her mother. There's no other elf with such aptitude. In fact, even Her Highness is inferior to her. Blower looked at Amy with furrowed brows, and he was suddenly very curious about who Amy's mother was. Ice-type magic is naturally the most powerful. Little Amy, you've already mastered the flames of extreme frost. Now, I'm going to teach you true ice-type magic. The frost dragon manifested from ice and frost is undeniably powerful. Julian looked at Amy with an earnest expression, and a frosty aura surged toward the Crassus like a sharp sword. That's just for show. Little Amy, I'm going to teach you even more powerful melee magic now. Regardless of whether your opponent is a magic caster or a knight, you'll only need to use a single strike of your staff to defeat them. Crassus was also guiding her patiently. He stomped his foot lightly, and a wall of fire rose up around him, which easily kept the sword of ice at bay. All of the customers in the back retreated even further away in fear of being caught in the crossfire. The situation became even more tense. The aura released by a great magic caster was extraordinarily powerful. Even though the magic was restricted to a certain range, the fact that it could erupt at any moment made everyone feel very nervous. It's time for business. Welcome. Right at this moment, the restaurant's door was opened, and Meg emerged with a smile on his face. He patted Amy's head, and thought to himself, this little guy really loves to stir up trouble. However, to be honest, he was also quite curious about who was more powerful between Julian and Crassus. If it weren't for the fact that he was worried that a fight between them would accidentally destroy the restaurant, he would have joined in to sow discord between them. Then let's eat. Amy scooted her little stool over to the side, and made a mischievous face at Meg. Me. Crassus and Julian harumphed in unison before withdrawing their auras and making their way into the restaurant. Mr. Blower and I hit it off right away. Would I have the honor of sitting with you later? Constantine turned to Blower with an expectant look on his face. You can sit wherever you want, Blower replied in an indifferent manner. As expected, they really are siblings. Even their tones and attitudes are so similar. However, it seems like Mr. Blower is more approachable. Constantine wasn't displeased by Blower's attitude in the slightest. He nodded with a smile, and said, sure. The customers made their way into the restaurant, and Amy quickly noticed Blower. Her eyes lit up as she said, you're so handsome, big brother. A smile appeared on Blower's face. It was very pleasing to be praised for his beauty, and he was just about to say something. It's a pity that he's a male elf. If only he were a beautiful big sister. Amy heaved a forlorn sigh. What's wrong with male elves? Why can't male elves be beautiful? Blower's eyes widened. He didn't think that he would be looked down upon because of his gender. He had clearly been praising himself over and over again during the afternoon. Phut, this little girl is so funny. Vivian laughed out loud. She was overjoyed. Teacher Luna. Amy caught sight of Luna, and immediately stood up with Ugly Duckling in her arms. She then turned to Vivian with a curious expression, and asked, Big Brother Mustache, why are you with Teacher Luna? Because I'm good friends with your Teacher Luna, so we came to eat together. Are you going to give us a discount, little boss? Vivian turned to Amy with a smile. Of course not, but you can pay for Teacher Luna. That's what all men should do, right? Amy looked at Vivian with a serious expression. How could there be such a sly little girl? Vivian raised an eyebrow. She didn't think that she would fall for Amy's tricks. Then I won't hold back. A smile also appeared on Luna's face as she looked at Vivian. Chapter 496. Blower, Shirley, elf, male, 25 years of age, 7th tier magic caster. Meg looked at the information displayed by the omniscient door in his mind, and his brows furrowed slightly. No wonder this guy looked so familiar, he was the crossdresser from earlier in the day. Teacher Luna. Meg nodded at Luna with a smile. Hello, Mr. Meg. Luna also nodded in response. Why didn't Mr. Mac say hello to me in private? Vivian hooked her arm around Luna's arm as she turned to Meg with a smile. Greetings, little sir. Meg turned to Vivian with a smile. It appeared that this crossdresser was quite close to Teacher Luna. However, judging from her display of dominance, could it be that? Meg turned to Vivian with a meaningful expression. Let's go, Luna. Let's go eat something delicious. Vivian was a little displeased that Meg had referred to her as little sir, but she had already achieved her objective of declaring dominance to Meg, so she happily made her way into the restaurant. Vivian, human, female, 19 years of age, 1st tier knight. A message popped up in his mind. Mag smirked as he thought to himself, it's indeed a lady who is dressed as a man. The big boss in men's clothing and the big boss in women's clothing are all here. This is really interesting. Meg had already determined that she was a woman the first time she had come, but judging from her smug expression, she was most likely still under the impression that he hadn't recognized her. Who is he? In the restaurant, Sally looked at Blower with narrowed eyes. This elf gave her a sense of familiarity, and she felt as if she had seen him somewhere before. Furthermore, his aura was quite similar to that of the elf from earlier in the day. Blower also glanced at Sally, but didn't say anything. He had arrived a little earlier that night, so there were still some empty seats in the restaurant. He chose an empty seat and sat down. Constantine sat down across from Blower with a smile on his face, and flipped open the menu as he said, "This must be your first time at Amy's, right? Mr. Mac's food is the best in the Aden Square. I'll have a Yangju fried rice, a mocha ice cream, and a sweet tofu pudding," Blower said to Yarbemia without even looking at the menu. "All right, please wait a moment." Yarbemia nodded with a smile before turning to Constantine, and asking, "Sir, what would you like to order?" "I'd like the same as him. Thank you." Constantine quickly regained his composure and nodded slightly. "All right, please wait a moment," Yarbemia said with a smile as she turned and walked towards the kitchen. Constantine had been trying to find a conversation topic this entire time, but Blower only gave him an occasional response. Most of the time, he was observing Sally. Constantine followed Blower's gaze, and murmured, "That's young Mistress Aisha, a waitress at Amy's." I wonder what method Mr. Mac used to get such a beautiful and aloof elf to work as a waitress at his restaurant. Aisha. Looks like she changed her name in order to hide her identity. However, working as a waitress at such a popular restaurant is a little clumsy. Even if Ingwe keeps the news under wraps for now, it won't be long before news of her working as a waitress here reaches the Brewster family. Blower's interest was piqued by Constantine's words, and he asked, "Do you know how long she's been working here?" "It should be over a month. In any case, she was already here when I first came here. Amy's has only been open for a little over a month, and it's already one of the top restaurants on the Aden Square Food Competition Rankings Board. It's a miracle," Constantine hurriedly replied. This was the first time Blower had taken the initiative to ask him a question, so he was naturally a little excited. "That's right." Blower nodded before turning back to his chopstick holder with a bored expression. He ignored Constantine. Ingwe had already told him everything that he needed to know, so there was no need for him to ask any more questions. Constantine had thought that he had successfully started a conversation, but he was caught up in the awkward conversation again. However, in order to earn some favorable impression points from Blower, he persisted in the awkward conversation. Sally was carefully observing Blower. She didn't know who he was, but the fact that two powerful elves had come to the restaurant in the afternoon and at night made her a little nervous. If they had come from the Wind Forest, then it was very likely that they were here for her. She had only just reached Chaos City after running away from home, and she didn't want to go back just like that. That would be a far cry from her original goal. Even though she wasn't sure when she would want to leave Mammoth, she still had dreams. She was confident that she would be able to leave Mammoth one day and embark on her journey again. Elves had long lifespans of 800 years, and she didn't want to spend that time in the wind forest. She also didn't want to give herself to a man whom she didn't know or even have met before meeting more people. Furthermore, she had a blueprint in her heart. Even though her brethren wandering the Norland continent had been abandoned by the god of life, she still wanted to gather them together again so that they could return to the wind forest and the god of life's embrace and blessings. A life without a home and faith was bound to be filled with despair. She didn't want to be some elven queen, but she was willing to be a guide for her brethren so that they could return to the wind forest. Sally withdrew her gaze from Blower as she gave herself a mental reminder. Luna, what would you like to eat? Vivian sat opposite Luna and flipped open the menu as she asked Luna. Didn't you want to eat the spicy grilled fish? Luna asked with a smile. She was just as elated as Luna about the spicy grilled fish being able to cure Vivian's illness. In the past, it was very rare to see a smile on Vivian's face. She was only 19 years old, but she was like an old woman in the dead of old. The torturous pain she had to endure every night had taken a huge toll on her. However, it was as if she had become a completely different person. She was rejuvenated, and even wanted to become a teacher. Sally was in complete disbelief that Vivian, who had once hated children, was doing something like this. That's right. The spicy grilled fish is my favorite. Vivian nodded with excitement. She thought to herself momentarily before turning to Luna, and saying, "How about we try the insanely spicy grilled fish today?" "I refuse." Luna shook her head without any hesitation. Her palate was on the bland side. She had only eaten a little spicy grilled fish during the restaurant gathering, and even just the medium spicy grilled fish was too much for her to handle. She couldn't even imagine the insanely spicy grilled fish. "Alright, then how about we order the super spicy grilled fish?" Vivian changed the subject. "Alright, then let's order the super spicy grilled fish." Luna nodded with a smile at the sight of Vivian's expectant expression. Chapter 497. I really want to eat tofu pudding, but if I order it now, I'll definitely be laughed at by that little elf. What should I do? This is so annoying. Dracula looked at Blower with a conflicted expression. He glanced at the image of the tofu pudding on the menu, and he could already feel himself salivating. He shouldn't be able to hear me if I speak quietly, right? After hesitating for a long while, Dracula finally made up his mind. He gestured for Yarbemia to come over, and whispered, "I'll have a savory tofu pudding and a braised chicken and rice." "Alright, please wait a moment." Yarbemia nodded with a smile. She had a very deep impression of this vampire demon, who had been exposed as a vegetarian for many days during the negotiations between the dragons and demons. "Uncle Bat, did you order the savory tofu pudding? It's a pity that the restaurant doesn't have any grass." Amy appeared beside Dracula with a smile on her face. All of the surrounding customers turned to look at Dracula with intrigue in their eyes. He had said that he definitely wasn't a vegetarian, but the tofu pudding was made from soybeans, so it was still a vegetarian dish. This little guy is a demon. He's just like that guy from back then, a demon even more terrifying than a demon. Dracula stared at Amy with wide eyes. He could see the figure of another elf in her smile, and it left an indelible mark on his memory. "There are a few small shrimps in the savory tofu pudding, and I actually ordered it for those small shrimps. Of course, as a gentleman, I definitely won't waste food." Dracula cleared his throat with a serious expression. A vegetarian vampire sure is rare. Blower also turned to look at Dracula with a hint of a smile on his face. "Little guy, why have you been so hostile toward me from the very beginning? I don't think we've met before." Dracula was a little perplexed as he looked at Blower with narrowed eyes. As a demon and a vampire patriarch, he also had his own bottom line and temper. All of the customers turned to Blower with concern in their eyes. Even though they were laughing along with him, no one dared to openly mock Dracula. After all, the fact that he dared to fly in the air above Chaos City indicated that he was at least at the 8th tier. He should be a level 7 magician, while Dracula is a level 9 magician. If the two of them were to clash, Dracula would have no chance of winning. Sally was also looking at Dracula with a concerned expression. She didn't have a good impression of demons, and even though she didn't know Blower, she definitely didn't want him to be bullied by demons. Does the enmity between elves and demons need any other reason? A hint of mockery appeared on Blower's face as he continued. During the war among species, the demons and the orcs invaded the Wind Forest. Do you have any idea how many elves were slaughtered? Some things can be forgotten with the passage of time, but in some people's hearts, they will never be forgotten. Very well, I accept that reason, so I'll allow you to treat me with this attitude. Dracula looked at Blower with a hint of surprise on his face, and nodded after a brief moment of silence. Will it never be forgotten? A contemplative look appeared on Sally's face as she looked at Blower. She had some knowledge of the history of the war among species. At the beginning of the war, the elven race was almost completely wiped out. Only then did they slowly resist the demons and orcs under the leadership of their queen, and after several centuries, they finally regained control over the Wind Forest. Something like that definitely won't happen again. The elven race is now more powerful than ever, Sally thought to herself. With the powerful elven army under their command, the elven race was already powerful enough to oppose any other race, and they didn't have to worry about the Wind Forest being conquered again. In that case, it looks like he's most likely from the Wind Forest. I wonder if he's going to spread the news about me. Sally looked at Blower with a hint of nervousness in her heart. You really are a gentleman. Blower looked at Dracula for a while before turning away and falling silent. Of course I'm a gentleman. I'm the most gentlemanly vampire in this world. Dracula nodded with a smug expression. Then you're very handsome, Uncle Bat, Amy said with a smile. I like your honest praise, little girl. Dracula nodded with a pleased expression as he looked at Amy. But you're still a far cry from my father, Amy said with a smile. So, should I still be happy? Dracula's expression was a little peculiar. As expected, this little girl never played by the rules. I think so. Amy nodded. All right, I'm very happy. Dracula looked at the departing figures of Crassus and Julian, and forced a smile onto his face as he nodded. The dishes arrived one after another, and all of the customers began to enjoy the food. Constantine had been trying to find a topic to talk about, but Blower was simply too cold and aloof. Just like Shirley, it was as if he were invisible, and Constantine didn't know what to say. Blower finished his food in silence. Even though this was only his second time eating it, he was still stunned by the delicious food that he had ordered. Blower put down his spoon and looked at his empty plate. He tidied up his clothes, and raised his hand as he said, "Check, please. Let me do it. It's my treat today." Constantine hurriedly stuffed the remaining half of his Ruggiamo into his mouth before pulling out his money pouch. "I'm Blower by Billy." Blower stood up and handed a dragon coin to Sally. Sally's hand instantly stiffened, and her eyes widened as she looked at Blower. The water elements around her became a little chaotic, as if they were about to erupt. "Don't be in such a hurry. I'm not here to fight with you today. If you don't mind, perhaps we can talk after the restaurant closes tonight." Blower looked at Sally with a calm expression. Sally looked at Blower with a meaningful expression, and hesitated momentarily before the blue light around her hand receded. The water elements around her also receded, and she accepted the dragon coin from Blower. She placed a gold coin back into his hand, and nodded as she said, "All right. Then I'll wait for you." Blower withdrew his hand and turned toward the restaurant. You. I'll pay the bill as well." Constantine looked on with a dumbstruck expression. He was still unable to process what was going on. Blower had just been asking him about Aisha, so why was he suddenly acting as if he were very familiar with Aisha? However, he still quickly paid the bill and hurried out of the restaurant. Chapter 498. The super spicy dish really is extraordinary, but it's so delicious. I feel like my entire body is on fire, it's like my insides are on fire, Vivian panted heavily with sweat beading on her forehead as she looked at Luna with elation. It's too spicy. I don't think I can eat too much. Otherwise, I'm going to get heaty tomorrow. Luna's nose and eyes were both red, and she was gently wiping away the tears that were flowing uncontrollably from the corners of her eyes with a white handkerchief. This level of spiciness was already beyond her tolerance level, and she couldn't even handle a little bit of it. Don't worry, Luna, I won't get heaty. I eat it every day, and I'm fine. Vivian waved a hand in response before placing another large piece of fish into her mouth. The spicy sensation spread throughout her entire body, and the residual frosty energy within her body was slowly dispelled. After the spiciness level increased, this sensation became more pronounced again. At this rate, I feel like I'll be able to make a full recovery in a month or two, Vivian said with elation. Then you should eat more. This spicy grilled fish was made just for you. Luna was also looking at Vivian with a smile on her face. Countless doctors and magic casters were at a loss for what to do, but in the end, Vivian's condition had been cured by a delicious spicy grilled fish. What a wonderful coincidence. Vivian nodded with a smile and said, "That's right. He was born just for me. When I recover from my illness, I'm going to give Boss Mag a plaque with the words Unparalleled Divine Doctor written on it." PFFFT. Luna couldn't help but burst into laughter. She tapped Vivian's forehead with an exasperated look, and said, "If you give Mr. Mac a plaque, where is he going to hang it? He's clearly a good chef. A restaurant owner who can't treat illnesses isn't a good chef." Vivian shrugged in response. "You're such a jerk." Luna scooped a spoonful of tofu pudding into her mouth to alleviate the spiciness in her mouth. In her opinion, bland food was more suitable for her. That elf was really good-looking. It's a pity that he's gone. It's been a long time since I've seen a man who's pleasing to the eye. Vivian looked back at the restaurant with a wistful expression. "You like him?" Luna asked with a smile. "Of course not. How could I like him?" Vivian raised an eyebrow as she whispered, "Besides, do you think a good-looking guy like him would like a woman who's uglier than him? For such a man, other than finding a prettier woman, the only other option left is to find another man." "Don't talk nonsense." Luna glared at Vivian, her eyes filled with fear. "Hehe, that's hard to say," Vivian replied nonchalantly as she continued to eat her grilled fish. Luna's her fiancé's. The Bybilly family was even more powerful than the Brewster family in the Elven race, which was why the engagement had been set without her. However, Sally had only seen her fiancé, who was known as the most handsome man in the Elven race, when she was young. He was a shy little boy who liked to hide in a tree, and she had never seen him again. She didn't expect him to find Mammis today, and it was obvious that he was here for her. Who was the person at noon? Sally frowned as she thought to herself. Her peaceful life seemed to have been disrupted all of a sudden. Should she resign herself to her fate and return to the Wind Forest, or should she leave Mama's and continue to wander around? Both choices made her feel a little frustrated. "Aisha, what's wrong?" Yarbemia gently patted Sally's arm and handed her the gold coin that she had just received with a concerned look on her face. "Oh, it's nothing." Sally forced a smile and took the gold coins from Yarbemia's hands. She pulled herself together and continued to collect money and clean the table. "What happened to Aisha? She's not like this normally." Yarbemia looked at Sally with a worried expression, but she was quickly called over by the customers next to her, and she began to work again. Sally ran away from home, so logically speaking, it's normal for her family to want her to return home. However, it's up to her whether she wants to go back or not. If it's really necessary, perhaps we can ask Crassus and Julian to help her. Meg also looked at Sally with a worried expression. Although he had expected this day to come, he still felt a little conflicted when it actually happened. "Boss Mag, I still sincerely invite you to open a restaurant on the Chaotic Islands. I swear on the reputation of the vampire race that I will ensure your safety and business. Your business will definitely not be worse than here." Dracula paid for his meal and walked to the entrance of the kitchen with a sincere expression. Before Mag could reply, many hostile gazes had already landed on him. All of the customers in the restaurant were looking at him meaningfully. This was a blatant attempt to snatch someone away from them right in front of their faces. Do you think the reputation of the vampire race is more intimidating than the two of us? Crassus looked at Dracula and said meaningfully. Back then, there was a big-mouthed ogre among the ogres who promised in the name of the ogres that he would eat me. After that, ogres ceased to exist in this world, Julian said in a hoarse voice. Urian's voice was very calm, and it was as if he were talking about something completely normal. Mr. Mac, I think it's a good idea for you to open a restaurant here. If I have time in the future, I'll come to eat here more often. I'll take my leave now. Please enjoy your meal, my lords and everyone. Dracula felt a chill run down his spine, but he quickly forced a smile onto his face. He walked out of the restaurant as he spoke without looking back. As soon as he walked out of the restaurant, he spread his arms, and a pair of large black wings appeared. He flapped his wings and flew into the sky, disappearing in the blink of an eye. This guy really does listen to his heart. He's not pretentious at all. Meg raised his eyebrows, and swallowed the words of rejection that were about to come out of his mouth. Boss, little Amy, goodbye. Yarbemia and Sally bade farewell before leaving the restaurant together. MIA, you can go back first. I still have something to do, Sally said to Yarbemia after they exited the restaurant. Aisha, are you really all right? Yarbemia was still looking at Sally with concern. Sally had been a little distracted since the beginning, and now she was going to travel alone. I'm fine. I'm just going to see someone. You don't have to worry. Sally shook her head, and a smile appeared on her face. At least someone was still concerned about her. All right, then go home early. Yarbemia nodded, and waved goodbye to Sally before turning to leave. Chapter 499. Let's go. There are some things that we shouldn't talk about. Blower looked down at Sally with a lazy expression. He gently pressed a hand against the tree branch beneath him, and his body drifted down. He then tapped a tree branch lightly before flying deeper into the plaza. Sally looked on at Blower's departing figure, and hesitated momentarily before quickly catching up to him. She also quickly disappeared into the forest. Father, are we not going to sleep yet? Amy yawned as she looked at Meg. Yes, we're going now. Meg withdrew his gaze, opened the door, and flipped the sign over before picking up Amy and Ugly Duckling, and making his way upstairs. There was a limit to what he could do for Sally. Before he recovered his powers, it would be wise for him to keep a low profile in the elven race. As such, he could only let Sally make her own decision. Tell me, why did you come to find me? If you're here to persuade me to go back to the Wind Forest, then you can give up. I definitely won't go back now. Sally stopped in her tracks as she looked at Blower. Her voice was a little cold, and there was a hint of wariness in her eyes. It wasn't easy for me to come to Chaos City. I don't want to go back so soon. Blower turned to Sally with a lazy smile, and said, Ingwe received news that you're staying at the Gaia Hotel and working at Amy's, so he sent word back to the Billy family. After that, my father told me to come to Chaos City to find you. His objective is very simple. He wants to get close to you and make you like me as much as possible. After that, we can continue the engagement between our two families. Even if you know where I live, you won't be able to stop me if I want to leave. You're only a 7th-tier magic caster, and Ambassador Ingwe is also a 7th-tier magic caster. Sally's expression became slightly grave. Her worst-case scenario had been confirmed. Blower really was here for her, and it wasn't just a coincidence that they had bumped into each other. Moreover, the Billy family already knew that she was here, so it wasn't realistic for her to continue staying at Amy's. However, she didn't know why Blower was telling her all of this. If his objective was to get close to her, then what he was doing now was very perplexing. You don't have to be nervous. I don't like you, and I've never thought of marrying you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have told you this as soon as we met. Instead, I would have slowly approached you and made you fall in love with me according to their plan. Blower looked at the wary Sally, who was about to attack him, and smiled as he said, Of course. With my stunning looks, I don't even need to follow their plans to make any woman fall in love with me. Then what do you want? Sally's brows furrowed slightly as she looked at Blower. She had heard about his narcissistic behavior back in the wind forest, and it appeared that it wasn't just a rumor. However, what she was concerned about was what he had just said. If he also didn't like her and was trying to resist, then perhaps they could talk things out. I want many things, but that doesn't include you. However, if you want to continue staying at Chaos City or Amy's, then you'd better cooperate with me. Otherwise, even I can't guarantee that the Brewster family won't find out about your presence here. Blower turned to Sally with a smile. Cooperate with what? Sally asked. They sent me to Chaos City to get close to you, then create some kind of possibility between us. This possibility is related to the marriage between the Billy family and the Brewster family. If they find out that there's no possibility between us, then they'll use this information as a bargaining chip in exchange for some benefits from the Brewster family. However, if they think that there's a chance that I'll be able to win you over and get this marriage back on track, then they'll do everything in their power to create more time for us to spend together. In fact, they'll even take the initiative to prevent news of your presence in Chaos City from spreading. Blower looked at Sally with a serious expression as he said, hence, what you need to do is to cooperate with me and pretend that you're interested in me. That way, you'll be able to gain more time to yourself. Sally looked at Blower in silence for a long while before asking, what's your objective for doing this? What do you want from me? My objective is very simple. I want to give you more freedom, but also give me more freedom. Chaos City is very interesting, so I want to stay here for a while longer. As for you, I hope you can give me a promise. Blower's smile faded as he spoke with a serious expression. What promise? Sally looked at Blower with a wary expression. She didn't believe that there would be a free lunch waiting for her in this world. Furthermore, this was the fiancé of a family that was trying so hard to get her to marry into their family. You might not be aware of this, but Princess Irina left the Cave of Life this morning and killed the leader of the Kroll family, Schubert. Blower didn't directly state his conditions. Instead, he changed the subject. What? Sally was slightly startled to hear this, and she stared at Blower with incredulity in her eyes. Schubert was the Chief Justice of the Kroll family, and held an extremely lofty position in the elven race. In fact, the Kroll family was even more influential than the Brewster family. Yet, Blower was telling her that Princess Irina had killed Schubert. How could something like that have happened? Ingwe just received a letter from his family this afternoon. Blower didn't keep Sally in suspense, and gave her a summary of the contents of the letter. He looked at Sally, whose expression gradually changed, and said with a serious expression, Schubert brought his own death upon himself, and Her Majesty's pardon decree confirms that. Even though Princess Irina has been confined for a year, compared to Schubert's death, it's quite clear what that means. Are elves who have lost their freedom no longer elves? Sally listened to Blower's words, and she felt as if the education she had received since she was a child had been dealt a massive blow. Your Highness, I also agree with what you said about freedom. However, the current elven race is powerful and free. If we were to overturn the current system of the elven race, or even overthrow the major families, the elven race would definitely become weaker and even weaker than before. If other races were to invade us again, what would the elven race do? If that were to happen, even more elves would lose their freedom and be subjected to even more humiliation. Sally was silent for a moment before shaking her head, and said, what we need to do now is to bring more wandering elves back to the Wind Forest. Only then will the elven race become even more powerful. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.